Chapter 89. What's the matter? After a long while, she heard Chu Liuchen's question. Qin Wanru was relieved. It was good that he could talk to people. She looked at Chu Liuchen's back with a smile and said, "Fragrance of July." When she read the medical book that day, she just felt a little familiar. Later, she remembered that Empress Dowager was not in good health and had a disease of hemoptysis due to deficiency of qi. One of the main medicines was often used, which was fragrance of July. Because of the water and soil problems, there was no fragrance of July in the capital city. The growing environment of this medicine was suitable for Jiangzhou, but it was rare. It could only be found by chance, and it was not enough every year. What do you mean? Chu Liuchen turned his head and sat up slightly. Qin Wanru hurriedly took a cushion and put it behind him. Qin Wanru was not surprised by his reaction. In her last life, she had heard that the Empress Dowager in the palace loved her grandson the most and liked him more than the princes born by the current emperor. Because of the Empress Dowager's love, Prince Qin, who could be regarded as the deposed crown prince, was also arrogant in the palace. No one dared to provoke him easily. It was certain that he had a good relationship with Empress Dowager. The medicine bowl in her hand was not so hot anymore. Qin Wanru reached out and handed it to Chu Liuchen. She blinked her clear eyes and moved her eyes from his face to the medicine bowl. She blinked her watery eyes and gave him a signal. The soup was thick and choking. It was obviously not tasty. Qin Wanru leaned back with disgust. In fact, she was most afraid of drinking this kind of medicine. Chu Liuchen was patted on the head. He didn't know whether it was Qin Wanru's words or the disgust on his face. He took the bowl and drank it up. After drinking it, he handed the bowl to Qin Wanru and patted her head again. He squinted at her and said, "You are so useless." Qin Wanru silently took the bowl and put it aside. She secretly curled her lips. He threw a tantrum and didn't drink the medicine. He even asked such a young girl to coax him. Now he had the nerve to despise her for being useless. "Have you found the fragrance of July with a certain age?" Chu Liuchen grabbed the handkerchief from Qin Wanru's hand, wiped his mouth carelessly, and threw it back to Qin Wanru. His expression was extremely natural, as if the handkerchief in Qin Wanru's hand was originally his. His temper was really arrogant and awkward. Qin Wanru speechlessly looked at her handkerchief, which was smeared with a large piece of dirt. She simply rubbed it in her palm and pretended that she didn't see it. She nodded and said, "I found a good fragrance of July." The older it was, the better the effect. No matter why Chu Liuchen appeared in Jiangzhou, fragrance of July must be one of his purposes. "But how many of them are there?" Chu Liuchen asked. "There are about 5 of them, and they are all about 100 years old." Qin Wanru said with a smile. "Where?" "It's in Jingxin Monastery." Qin Wanru didn't hide it. This was actually a gift from the master of Jingxin Monastery. It was a gift for Qin Wanru as an elder, but it was still in the hands of the master of Jingxin Monastery for the time being. "Abbess of Jingxin Monastery?" Chu Liuchen touched his chin playfully. "Yes, it's the master of Jingxin Monastery." Qin Wanru nodded and said affirmatively. Then her watery eyes flickered, and her eyes were glittering. "Child, if you get it, don't forget to give me a great merit." Since there was such a chance to get credit, Qin Wanru wouldn't forget to do it for herself. "Alright, I got it. I'll give it back to you," Chu Liuchen said impatiently. He reached under his pillow and casually took out an object and threw it to Qin Wanru like throwing rubbish. Qin Wanru subconsciously took it and looked at it. It turned out to be her seal. She raised her head and looked at his messy pillow. She was speechless. Those who didn't know would think that this seal was something very important to him. He even put it under his pillow when he was lying on the bed. However, Qin Wanru was still very happy to get her seal back. She stood up and bowed sideways. She said respectfully, "Thank you, child." "Qin Wanru, you still owe me a lot. This is not the end." Chu Liuchen raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. His handsome face was gentle and elegant at this time. Even though his face looked pale without a trace of blood, he was still outstanding, like pearls and jade. His eyes under his long eyelashes were deep. "Yes, thank you for your kindness." Qin Wanru helplessly bowed again. This Prince Chen was really vengeful. He was so sick, but he still cared so much about her and didn't want to suffer any loss. She also didn't understand why this noble prince, who had a limitless future, would make life difficult for a little girl like her. He always wanted to take the lead in everything. Chu Luchen snorted weakly this time, which was a response to Qin Wanru. Then he squinted at Qin Wanru and looked at the small stool in front of the bed. Qin Wanru understood and had to sit down on the stool again. She actually wanted to leave. "Bring the food up, I'm hungry," Chu Luchen shouted at the door angrily. Qin Wanru looked sideways and saw a familiar cloth corner. Xiao Xuanzi was hiding there. He was worried that her talking to Chu Luchen would irritate Prince Chen. "I'll bring it right away." Hearing that Chu Luchen took the initiative to ask for a meal, Xiao Xuanzi was overjoyed and hurried in from the door with a smile on his face. He didn't expect that the second Miss Qin had such an ability. She not only let him drink the medicine but also let him have a meal. He was really afraid of messing things up before. "Have you been listening at the door for a while?" Xiao Xuanzi's smile froze, and then he shook his hands. No, sir, I just came here and didn't hear anything." "You really didn't hear anything?" Chu Luchen asked gloomily. Xiao Xuanzi didn't dare to lie this time. He lowered his head and said timidly, "Sir, I was worried about you. I just listened a little, really just a little." "Just listened a little?" Chu Luchen smiled. His smile was gentle, but there was a chilling feeling hidden in it. "Yes, only one ear," Xiao Xuanzi stammered. "Since you only listened to one ear, then why do you want the other ear? Chop it off." Chu Liuchen's curved lips smiled more brightly. Xiao Xuanzi trembled and his teeth chattered. He knelt down with a plop sound. "Sir, please spare my life. Please spare my life." "Well, go down and serve the meal. Remember to listen to two ears next time." Chu Luchen reached out and patted the corner of his quilt. He was in a good mood and decided not to scare his personal little eunuch anymore. "Sir." At this time, Xiao Xuanzi also realized that his master was joking with him. He smiled happily and hurried down to ask people to serve the meal. Qin Wanru helplessly looked at the beautiful boy who was complacent in front of her. His mischievous look was really not like the lifeless look just now. The meal had already been served. There were 4 dishes and 1 soup, which were all very suitable for a sick person like him to eat. It was very light. Chu Luchen seemed to have no appetite. He just picked a few dishes with his chopsticks and couldn't eat any more. He looked up and saw Qin Wanru, who was looking at him eagerly. He was happy. "Have you eaten?" Qin Wanru shook her head. She was waiting to eat when Xiao Xuanzi came over. Seeing him eating, she also felt hungry. She bit her pink cherry lips, puffed up and lowered her head. She really felt hungry. She watched him eat, but she was late for the meal. Moreover, these dishes looked good. "Do you want to eat some?" Chu Luchen said playfully. He suddenly felt that this idea was good. He said to Xiao Xuanzi, who was serving beside him, "Prepare a set of bowls and chopsticks for Qin Wanru. I will eat with her." "Master?" Xiao Xuanzi froze for a moment. His master disliked eating with others the most. Even with the Empress Dowager, he rarely ate with her. "Hurry up." Chu Luchen squinted at Qin Wanru and said. His eyes fell from her white skin to her pink cherry lips. Because she heard his words, she bit her upper lip. Her lower lip looked flat, and her cheeks were bulging. If 2 bubbles were drawn on her cheeks, it would really look like a bulging goldfish's mouth. This was really amusing. He also liked the color of her lips. Compared with his usual pale lip color, her lip color made him feel very energetic at first sight. What an enviable lip color. Feeling that Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on her face, Qin Wanru hurriedly put down her upper lip that she had bitten. Xiao Xuanzi gave her a new set of bowls and chopsticks, and filled a small bowl of rice for her. Looking at the dishes, Qin Wanru decided not to refuse. He didn't look like someone who could be refused. Anyway, she was hungry. Today she could be regarded as a meritorious minister. The consequence of not refusing was that Qin Wanru picked up the bowl and enjoyed it very much. When she finished, she found that Chu Luchen had been staring at her in a daze. Qin Wanru blinked her eyes and didn't understand why he was looking at her. She subconsciously reached out to wipe her face with a handkerchief, and then saw Xiao Xuanzi's almost twisted face, and Chu Luchen laughing so hard that he almost overturned the bowl in his hand. Under the long and curly eyelashes, a pair of big black and white eyes blinked. Qin Wanru followed Xiao Xuanzi's eyes and looked at her handkerchief with a little confusion. She found the traces of medicine that Chu Luchen had just wiped on the handkerchief. She was so shy that her face suddenly turned red. She threw away the handkerchief in her hand and subconsciously reached out to cover the place where she wiped. Then she stood up and walked out. Chu Luchen must have done it on purpose. This person was really evil. He led her to wipe the dirty handkerchief on her face. Needless to say, there must be dark brown stains on her face. Behind her came Chu Liuchen's uncontrolled laughter. "Miss." Qin Yu had been obediently waiting outside. Seeing Qin Wanru covering her face, she was shocked and hurried over. "Handkerchief." Qin Wanru secretly gritted her teeth. Qin Yu hurriedly handed the handkerchief in her hand to Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru stretched out her hand and wiped her face fiercely. While walking out, she felt the laughter behind her was more and more disgusting. This person had predicted her subconscious behavior and led her to smear her face. He was so cunning. Or he had already thought of this when she was eating and was waiting for her to make a fool of herself. Qin Wanru hurried back to Jingxin Monastery, but she didn't go back to her yard. Instead, she went directly to Mingqiu Nun's hut. She had to report something to Mingqiu Nun in advance. Chapter 90. The door of Mingqiu Nun's hut seemed to be locked all the time, for fear that others would disturb her meditation. Now Qin Wanru was familiar with the way. She took down the lock, pushed the door and walked in. In the middle of the hut, there was actually a small Buddha hall, in which a small Buddha statue was enshrined. The Buddha statue was the image of the thousand-hand Guanyin, vivid and kind, and there was a kind of indescribable dignified and noble dignity. At first glance, people would feel sincere from the bottom of their hearts. There were only 3 incense sticks in the Buddha hall, which were very faint. On the rush cushion in front, Mingqiu Nun was chanting in a low voice with her eyes closed, looking very pious. Qin Wanru took another rush cushion from the side and bowed respectfully to the Buddha in it beside Mingqiu Nun. Being reborn made her more respectful to the Buddha. After bowing, she put her palms together and quietly listened to Mingqiu Nun chanting in a low voice. After a while, Mingqiu Nun opened her eyes and looked at Qin Wanru with a smile. "Why are you so early today?" Usually, Qin Wanru would take a rest after the meal before coming. "I have something to tell you." Qin Wanru turned the rush cushion to another direction, looked at Mingqiu Nun, and said solemnly, "What's the matter?" Mingqiu Nun asked in surprise. "Nun, do you still remember that the master of Jingxin Monastery gave me 5 fragrance of July last time?" Qin Wanru asked. Mingqiu Nun nodded with a smile. "I didn't take it at that time, and said that I would leave it with the master of Jingxin Monastery. This time I heard that a noble from the capital city came, and these several fragrance of July were given to that noble in the name of Jingxin Monastery." Qin Wanru said while choosing her words. "Given to a noble in the capital city?" Mingqiu Nun asked, "Why not send it yourself?" "These fragrance of July were originally from Jingxin Monastery. If I give it to a noble in the capital city, I think it's better to use the name of Jingxin Monastery. On the one hand, I can't have such a precious gift myself, and on the other hand, I can leave a name for Jingxin Monastery in the noble's place, or I can leave a reliance for Jingxin Monastery." Qin Wanru said softly, but her eyes were deep in the place where Mingqiu Nun could not see. She was not trying to be mysterious. In her previous life, she heard that Jingxin Monastery was destroyed. At that time, she was already in the capital city. She heard this news from Qin Yuru and Madame D by chance. She was not clear about the details. She only said that there seemed to be thieves in Jingxin Monastery and they were arrested by the people in the monastery. Then they were sent to prison. But later on, he heard that something happened and was sent to the capital again. At that time, she was trapped in the backyard and didn't even have a useful person around her. She didn't know what happened after that. But no matter what, she didn't want to see the nunnery that had saved so many people get into trouble, and she didn't want anything to happen to the benevolent Jingxin Monastery master and Mingqiu nun. Nobleman? Mingqiu nun frowned, obviously not knowing who she was talking about. It's a sick nobleman. Now he should be asking Jingxin Monastery master to treat him. He came from the capital city. Qin Wanru couldn't reveal Chu Liuchen's identity too much, so she could only say it implicitly. According to these few pieces of news and Chu Liuchen's own request to the master of Jingxin Monastery, this matter was very likely to be true. Since you're willing to entrust this favor to Jingxin Monastery, I'm grateful. Mingqiu nun was not a pedantic person. She smiled slightly and accepted Qin Wanru's kindness. She didn't ask how Qin Wanru knew this matter. Next, Mingqiu nun stood up and took Qin Wanru to the next wing room to teach her. Chu Liuchen was in a good mood when he saw Qin Wanru leave with her hands covering her little face. Later, he even added a little bit of rice. Although it was just a little bit of rice, it had already made Xiao Xuanzi excited and affirmed his behavior today. Fortunately, second Miss Qin came over. Otherwise, how could the prince eat so obediently? Every time the prince lost his temper, it would be a mess and the whole imperial palace would be alarmed. But this time it passed quietly, and the prince seemed to be in a good mood. After the meal, Chu Liuchen lay down in a good mood. Thinking of the brown medicine stain on Qin Wanru's face, he couldn't help laughing again. He was not in a good mood, so he really fell asleep after laughing for a while. He slept for a long time and didn't get up until the evening. Hearing the sound inside, Xiao Xuanzi hurried to lift the bed curtain and reached out to touch his forehead. The temperature on his forehead was normal, which made him feel relieved. Seeing Chu Liuchen actually sat up by himself and was about to get up, he hurriedly said, "Sir, it's dark now, where are you going? Have a good rest first." "I'm going to see Jingxin Monastery master to ask for the 5 fragrance of July," Chu Liuchen said with a lazy posture. "Sir, isn't it a little too late for you to do this? Wait for tomorrow, Jingxin Monastery master still has to give you a follow-up examination tomorrow. It's a good time for you to talk about this." Xiao Xuanzi looked at the sky outside and persuaded. Chu Liuchen's gaze also fell outside the window. He slept for a long time just now, and the sky actually became dark at this time. "Then let's go tomorrow." Chu Liuchen nodded, leaned on the cushion that Xiao Xuanzi brought, and found a comfortable position. "Sir, do you feel better?" Xiao Xuanzi handed a cup of warm water to Chu Liuchen and asked with concern. Chu Liuchen took a sip, and then raised his cold eyes. "The medicine is not bad, it has some effect." "That's great. I'll stay in Jiangzhou for a while and let the abbess help you recuperate. Then, I'll find the person mentioned by Dr. Qi. At that time, I'll be cured." Xiao Xuanzi's eyes lit up, and a big stone in his heart was loosened. "Not necessarily, it's hard to say until the person is found." Chu Liuchen slightly narrowed his eyes, no longer paying attention to this matter, and changed a topic. "Is there any news from the capital city?" Counting the days, it should be time to trigger the trap he set. This time leaving the capital city was not as simple as leaving the capital city. "I'm about to report to you, there's news that Empress Dowager was angry and punished Empress." Empress Dowager and many knelt outside Empress Dowager's palace of benevolent and peaceful for 4 hours. After that, even the emperor's plea was rejected by Empress Dowager, and she asked them to find you, saying that they must make you leave in anger. After Xiao Xuanzi sorted out the news he had just received, he reported. Chu Liuchen leaned back thoughtfully, looked at the bottom of the curtain above, and silently showed a trace of hostility on his lips. What did they say? Although he didn't say it clearly, Xiao Xuanzi knew that he was talking about the current emperor, and hurriedly said, "They only said that they persuaded Empress Dowager, and then reprimanded Empress Dowager NS. After that, they didn't say anything, but only said that they would let you go as soon as possible. It seems that there will be an imperial edict coming soon." Chu Liuchen said coldly. The world was a game, and the country was a chess piece. He had long been in the game. Chess pieces came one after another, and now it was just a step by step. What, that family moved? Madame D stood up and walked around the room for a few times, and her face was livid. She finally found a little clue, and now it was going to disappear? It was all Qin Wanru's fault. Yes, they moved. I've asked around, and no one knew where they moved. They only said that they moved overnight, and the next morning, they were gone. They didn't move some heavy things, and just took some simple luggage and left. Nanny Zhou also frowned tightly. She came from Duke Yong's mansion, and if it weren't for her, Madame D wouldn't be able to recognize him. After all, how could a miss from an aristocratic family recognize a servant? "Where's Chulu?" Madame D turned back and sat in front of the table. She slammed her hand on the table, and the teacup on the table couldn't stand the force and fell to the ground, making a clear sound of breaking. Seeing Madame D's face, Nanny Zhou didn't dare to pick up the broken pieces immediately and answered hurriedly, "She is still in Jingxin Monastery with 2nd Mississippi. This bitch still keeps this girl. What does she want to do?" Madame D was a little panicked. "Does she know anything?" "Madam, don't worry, 2nd Miss can't know anything. She was still young at that time, and she was an ignorant child. So many years have passed, if old grandma didn't say that you were not 2nd Miss's birth mother, 2nd Miss still wouldn't know about it." Nanny Zhou comforted her. This old beggar can't even protect herself, and she still dares to meddle in other people's business. But even if she meddled, so what? She doesn't know what happened at that time. Speaking of this, Madame D was so angry that her teeth were itching. She gritted her teeth, and a bit of viciousness flashed in her eyes. How could this old woman be fine? She had given her such a heavy drug, but she could still be saved. If this old woman was dead, Shui Rulin wouldn't be able to enter the door at this time. Thinking of the resentment, her eyes bulged, and the gloominess made her beautiful face look ferocious. "Madam, don't be anxious. This matter can't be rushed. Moreover, even if this person is dead, don't you have other things in your hands that can prove it? At that time, it will be just a matter of a word from you. I just don't know whether your guess is true or not." Nanny Zhou lowered her voice and persuaded, but then she hesitated. This matter was just Madame's guess, and she didn't know whether it was true or not. "It's a little similar. The time is almost the same, and the general also described that person before. You send someone to look for him again, and if there's any news, you must report to me as soon as possible. This time, take him directly away, so as to avoid any more trouble. As for other things, we'll talk about it later." Madame D felt that she was too indecisive before, or else she wouldn't have let him escape from her hands. If she took him away and directly interrogated him, it would be a great thing if she could get anything out of him. Even if she could not get anything out of him, he was just a servant who was lost in Jiangzhou, and it wouldn't be a problem to kill him. "Yes, madam, I understand." Nanny Zhou understood and said. Thinking about it, Madame D still felt indignant. "We had agreed to let that girl work for me. How dare he send her to the cheap girl's place? Is he deliberately going against me?" "Madam, I'm afraid it's a coincidence. Originally, we were going to choose a maid for the 1st Miss, but unexpectedly, the matter of choosing a maid for the 2nd Miss suddenly popped up, so the person was sent to the 2nd Mississippi." Nanny Zhou didn't think it was possible, and shook her head. This matter was indeed a little coincidental, but there was a reason for it. Chapter 91. Her words made Nanny Zhou tremble. She knew what Madame D was asking, but she didn't dare to answer. "What? Can't you say it? Do you go to that vixen's place every day? How shameless! How can you be so intimate with a widow?" Madame D bit her teeth so hard that they almost sank into her flesh. She stared at Nanny Zhou viciously, as if she was Shui Rulin in front of her. Madam, this is just temporary. When we get to the capital city, we can pressure Duke Huayong's mansion and send beauties to the general. At that time, the general's enthusiasm will be over, and he won't fight against you for her. Moreover, 1st Miss is the general's only daughter." Nanny Zhou comforted Madame D hurriedly. "Okay, I will bear it. I don't believe that Shui Rulin, the bitch, will have a good life in the capital city, and Qin Huayong will really lock me up for a lifetime." Madame D's eyes were almost dripping with venom. When they got back to the capital city, with Duke Yong's mansion behind her, she had plenty of means. "Don't worry, madam. There will be news in a few days. The steward of old madam has sent the news." Nanny Zhou comforted her. These days, she was afraid that Madame D couldn't bear it anymore. They were in Jiangzhou now, And if something really happened, the capital city couldn't do anything. Seeing that Madame D still kept a clear mind, Nanny Zhou was relieved. Madam, do you want to send more tonics to old grandma? Have they been sending them? Nanny Zhou thought for a while and reminded Madame D. Although Madame D was now grounded, it was a good thing to send some tonics to show filial piety to her mother-in-law, and the general couldn't stop it. I won't send them off. Madame D refused flatly, and her face became colder and colder. She smiled slightly and said, "They have been sending medicinal materials? Where did she get so many medicinal materials?" She went to the pharmacy to buy some good ones. After sorting them out, they were sent to the mountain. I heard that old grandma is very satisfied, Nanny Zhou reported. Although the affairs of the mansion were now managed by Madame Shui, Madame D used to have many confidants, so it was easy to get information. Sort out first? Madame D thought for a while and said, "Pour some of the stuff in my sachet on those herbs and ask Shui Rulin to send them up the mountain." Her words shocked Nanny Zhou and she almost turned pale. Her voice became lower with a little tremble. "Madam, are you going to pour the powder of Qingxiu grass into the medicinal herbs?" "Yes, I was thinking about how to get close to that old woman. Since Shui Rulin is willing to help me, let's do it. If something happens, they won't be able to find out that I'm responsible for it." Madame D said coldly. But Madame Shui has no reason to frame old Madame. Nanny Zhou felt it was inappropriate and cautiously reminded her. Everything was done with a reason. Obviously, Madame Dowager was Shui Rulin's strong support. How could she put the powder of Qingxiu grass, which caused Madame Dowager's illness, into Madame Dowager's medicine? Maybe she didn't pay attention to it. If something happens, it will be a mess. Who will notice it? Madame D said indifferently. She pointed to a direction and said, "If someone doesn't like this old woman, that arrogant girl in the magistrate's mansion also had an accident in the general's mansion. She also doesn't like this old woman." She was talking about Qi Rongji. Nanny Zhou understood. Then, shall we do it? She hesitated and asked. "Go and do it secretly. Be careful and no one will find it. Shui Rulin has been in charge of the inner court for such a long time. What does she know? Except for her servant girls, who else is her confidant? She doesn't know medicine. Even if she sorts out the medicinal herbs one by one, she won't find anything." Madame D said decisively and reminded, "Remember to be careful. Don't let anyone find it in the mansion. Be careful of the general's people." Shui Rulin's people were not scary. What was scary was Qin Huayong's people. If Qin Huayong found out that she had done something to the medicinal herbs, he would not let her off easily. "I will be careful. Don't worry, madam," Nanny Zhou said anxiously. Madame D thought for a while and ordered, "Think of a way to make that arrogant girl go to Jingxin Monastery once. It would be better if she can make some trouble. Then even if the medicinal herbs were to be exposed, others would only suspect her." Qi Rongji was not only arrogant but also vicious. She had suffered a great loss in their mansion. Now that Yuru was not here, she would definitely vent her anger on Qin Wanru. It was said that Qin Wanru's marriage was ruined. She would hate Qin Wanru to the bone if she picked a few words. The relationship between the two mansions had been good for many years. Madame D was good at dealing with people. There were also people in the magistrate's mansion who were roped in by Nanny Zhou. It was very convenient for her to do something. "Yes, I understand." Nanny Zhou understood and took out a sachet from the bottom of the dressing table. This sachet was worn by Madame D. Now that old grandma was not in the mansion, it was useless to wear it. So she took it off. When Qin Wanru came out of old grandma's room, it was already late. She came so late because she heard that old grandma was not in good health again. With Mingqiu Nun's teaching as a cover, Qin Wanru could treat old grandma at this time. After she personally performed acupuncture on old grandma slept more peacefully. "Nanny Duan, did old grandma come in contact with anything today?" Qin Wanru asked Nanny Duan at the door. Grandma had been getting better and seemed to be recovering well. How could she suddenly get sick again at this time? She was fine in the morning. When Second Miss was here, Madame Dowager basically didn't cough. But after lunch and a short nap, Madame Dowager didn't feel well. During that time, Madame Dowager didn't eat anything but a bowl of nourishing bird's nest. After that, I talked with her in the room for a while. Nanny Duan was also very puzzled. Old grandma's activities were no different from before, but she coughed badly after waking up. But in fact, it was only a little worse than before and couldn't be compared with the first time. But because Qin Wanru had told Nanny Duan to report immediately if there was any change in old grandma's condition. Is it because she kicked off the quilt when she fell asleep and got cold? Nanny Duan guessed. Qin Wanru shook her head. If she didn't know medicine, she might also guess so. But she just checked and it seemed that grandma's illness was not because of the cold, but because she was stimulated by something. Is it the bird's nest that grandma used to use? Qin Wanru was suspicious. It's what old grandma used to use. They were all sent by Madame Shui from the foot of the mountain. Because the previous ones were almost used up, Madame Shui sent some more to old grandma to nourish her body. Nanny Duan remembered it clearly because the servant girl who cooked the bird's nest specially came to her and told her that the bird's nest sent before was almost used up and not enough for a bowl of stew. So she asked the servant girl to find the bird's nest from the newly sent medicinal materials. As expected, there were new ones. Nanny Duan trusted Shui Ruolin's things very much. Today's bird's nest was newly sent? Yes, it was sent today, but most of it was the last time, and only a little was added today. Nanny Duan confirmed. Go get it for me. Qin Wanru thought of something and said hurriedly. Yes, I'll get it right now. Second miss, please wait. Nanny Duan's face turned pale. If it was really about the medicinal materials, she would be negligent, so she hurriedly turned and walked into the room. She heard that her second miss had learned medicine from the master of Jingxin Monastery and Mingqiu Nun, and now her medical skills were very good. As for the cause of the disease, what second miss said was naturally true. After a while, she took out a bag of bird's nest. Qin Wanru opened the outer packaging, and her eyes fell on the bird's nest. She looked at it and found nothing, so she picked up a small piece and put it to her mouth. The master of Jingxin Monastery said that normal people couldn't smell qingchu grass, but they could identify it by tasting it. Under her lips, there was a slight bitterness. Hands and feet. She trembled. It was really qingchu grass. She really wanted to kill grandma. Without grandma, without the suppression of the title, Madame D would have the advantage when facing her and her mother, so she couldn't wait to do it. Now Qin Wanru could be sure that the reason why grandma got sick every year and even died because of the disease in the previous life was because of Madame D. Madame D's old sachet should have qingchu grass in it. Now she couldn't see grandma, so she came up with such a vicious way to send the powder of qingchu grass to grandma. In the previous life, she thought grandma died of depression because of her, but it turned out to be Madame D. Madame D wanted to dominate the backyard, so she used such a vicious trick to kill grandma. Now she even used it in the medicinal materials sent by her mother. Even if she found it, she couldn't be blamed. Madame D really had a good trick. And with Madame D's tricks, there should be more than this. Nanny Duan, send all the medicinal materials sent by mother to me this time. First, use the medicinal materials sent in the past to adjust the body. If there are still some missing materials, please go down the mountain and find some suitable medicinal materials from the medicine shop. Qin Wanru put down the things in her hands and said to Nanny Duan, These medicinal materials. Is there something wrong? Nanny Duan was shocked. There is something wrong, but it can't be mother. I'm afraid that they have been tampered with when they were sent here. Qin Wanru said euphemistically and slowly lowered her eyes. Nanny Duan immediately understood the meaning of her words. Shui Ruolin had not been in charge of the backyard for a long time, and old grandma was on the mountain. How many people could she subdue during this period of time? Someone might deliberately fish in troubled waters and use Shui Ruolin's things to harm old grandma. Nanny Duan naturally thought of Madame D. But she also knew that even if this matter was exposed, it had little to do with Madame D and would not affect Madame D. She immediately nodded with a serious face, knowing that Qin Wanru's way of handling it was the best. Nanny Duan admired this childish second miss more and more. She was so young, but she was sensible. Thinking of Madame Dowager's care for Second Miss in the past and how the Second Miss protected Madame Dowager now, Nanny Duan's eyes turned red. After Qin Wanru told Madame Dowager everything here, she went back with Qin Yu. At this time, it was already dark and lanterns had been hung in Jingxin Monastery. However, there were not many lanterns. Only one was placed at the corner of the road so that people could see. Chapter 92. Brother Baiyu, what are you doing? Seeing him, Qin Wanru smiled and covered her head with her hands. She squatted down and picked up a stone, tilted her body to the side and threw it back. Qin Wanru, what are you doing? I'm here to tell you something, don't bite the hand that feeds you. The teenager dodged to the side and avoided the stone, but his voice was not loud. He deliberately lowered it. After jumping down from the tree, he waved to Qin Wanru and entered an empty yard. Qin Wanru followed him in. Brother Baiyu, what's the message? Qin Wanru clapped her hands and asked with a smile. Of course it's to tell you to be careful of Qi Rongji. She wanted to come here this afternoon, but she accidentally fell and had to come tomorrow. Qi Baiyu raised his head proudly. So Qi Rongji was supposed to come this afternoon, which was about the time when her mother sent the medicinal materials. According to the usual pattern, if Qi Rongji came to the mountain, she should come to see her grandmother and the elders. Then the matter of the medicinal materials would be even more unclear. Madame D was so calculative. Brother Baiyu, you asked her to fall? Qin Wanru understood and smiled like a flower. Of course it was me. She came to the mountain with bad intentions. Be careful and don't go out if you don't want to meet her again. Qi Baiyu warned. Thank you, Brother Baiyu, I got it. Qin Wanru smiled and bowed to him. They grew up together and were both naughty, so they got along well. I heard that you... Qi Baiyu hesitated for a second when he said this. What do you want to ask, Brother Baiyu? It was the first time that Qin Wanru saw Qi Baiyu so unhappy, so she asked with a smile. Is your family going to leave Jiangzhou? Qi Baiyu blushed when she stared at him. Stomping his feet, the teenager felt that there was nothing to hide. Stomping his feet, the teenager felt that there was nothing he could hide. Maybe, Qin Wanru said. Based on what happened in her previous life, she was indeed about to leave the capital city. However, in her previous life, she left the capital city to avoid her bad reputation in Jiangzhou. In this life, the roles were reversed with Qin Yuru. It was Qin Yuru who went to the capital city to avoid her bad reputation in Jiangzhou. If you really leave, I won't have a good playmate. Qi Baiyu was very sad. You still have Qi Rongji. Qin Wanru teased. She doesn't like to play with me. She likes to play with the young masters of other families. Qi Baiyu curled his lips. He knew very well what kind of person Qi Rongji was, and so did Qin Wanru. By the way, be careful tomorrow. Today, I overheard her talking to Chun Yi about you. She said that this time, she will definitely make you pay. Maybe she wants to hurt you again. Don't see her if you can, in case she gives birth to some evil things. Qi Baiyu reminded. Qi Rongji had suffered a great loss this time and gained a reputation of being bossy and domineering, which was not much better than Qin Yuru's. She had not vented her anger until now, so it was very likely that she would vent it on Qin Wanru. Well, I will be careful. Will Brother Baiyu come tomorrow? Qin Wanru asked. Yes, she said that Qi Tianyu is not here. As her brother, I have to accompany her. At night, she even went to the mansion and made a scene. She said that she didn't want me to accompany her, as if I was going to accompany her. Qi Baiyu said disdainfully. Qi Rongji didn't treat him as a brother, and he didn't treat Qi Rongji as a sister either. He thought that Qin Wanru was a better sister. She was well-behaved and obedient. Besides, she loved to play as much as he did. However, after this incident, Qi Baiyu also knew that he had to avoid arousing suspicion. He didn't forget how his brother, who was usually gentle and elegant, reprimanded Qin Wanru. He even said that she had an affair with him. He couldn't believe that such slanderous words came from the sanctimonious Qi Tianyu. In the past, when he wanted to meet Qin Yuru, it was not convenient for him to ask her out directly. Therefore, he and Qi Baiyu asked the Qin sisters out together. After that, he asked Qi Baiyu to keep an eye on Qin Wanru. He didn't know where he and Qin Yuru went to spend time alone. In the end, he and Qin Wanru had nothing to do, but he poured dirty water on Qi Baiyu and Qin Wanru. On him. This time, Qi Baiyu finally saw through Qi Tianyu's true colors. In the past, Qi Baiyu treated him as a brother on the surface. In vain he really treated him as a brother. He was different from Qi Rongji. Brother Baiyu, are you coming with her? Qin Wanru asked again. A trace of darkness flashed in her watery eyes. If Qi Baiyu came with her, she couldn't make things too big. Otherwise, Qi Baiyu would not be able to explain. What a coincidence! She just heard from the master of Jingxin Monastery that there would be a big religious ceremony tomorrow and there would be a lot of people coming to watch. Many women from all over the country would come, and some of them who lived far away would stay here tonight. These women used to work like men, so they would see a lot of people. They were much more shrewd than the young ladies from rich families. Moreover, some prostitutes also came to join in the fun. That's right, but it's fine. Just let her fall again and return to the mansion early. Qi Baiyu kicked the stone beside his feet. He tilted his head and looked at Qin Wanru. It was rare for a young man to have something on his mind. He sighed. If you go to the capital city, will it be possible to see you again? He would be reluctant to leave his childhood playmates as long as they were playful. It didn't matter about the relationship between a man and a woman. We will meet again. Brother Baiyu, you should also study hard. Then you can go to the capital city to take the exam. Don't let others take all the glory. Qin Wanru comforted him with a smile. She was very touched by him. In her previous life, Qi Baiyu came to the capital city and helped her secretly. When she was in a difficult situation, he always helped her and believed in her. He helped her out of the mire of the Qin's mansion and even wanted to marry her at the cost of his own life after she refused to marry him again and again. However, in the end, Madame D sent her to the Prime Minister's mansion in order to build a relationship with him. Qi Baiyu was a smart man. But in her last life, she had implicated him a lot. His reputation was also damaged because of her. Well, then I'm leaving. Be careful tomorrow. Don't talk to me when you see me. Anyway, you don't need to talk to the people in our mansion. The young man's worries came and went quickly. He thought what Qin Wanru said was reasonable. As long as he studied hard, it was possible to surpass Qi Tianyu. If he could get a good exam and stay in the capital city, he could play with Qin Wanru again. Hey brother Bai, be careful. Qin Wanru nodded. Qi Baiyu jumped onto the top of the wall and looked around. Then he went to the corner. If he went down from there, he could directly turn to the path outside of Jingxin Monastery. The manservant was waiting for him at the entrance of the path with the horse. Finding the right direction, Qi Baiyu jumped down from the top of the wall and then climbed up another wall. After a few jumps, he landed on the wall closest to the edge. He could already see the surprised eyes of the manservant outside the wall. Qi Baiyu put his hand on the wall and was ready to jump down. Suddenly, his hand seemed to be hit by something. His wrist was numb and he couldn't bear the force. He fell down from the wall. The servant was so scared that he hurriedly reached out his hand. Both of them fell and rolled together. Second young master, are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? The servant got up and asked anxiously. Qi Baiyu turned over and sat up. He touched the place where he was hurt and said, I didn't fall anywhere. Strange, how did I fall? He raised his head and looked at the high wall. The height was considered high in the eyes of others, but it was nothing in his eyes. He usually liked to learn martial arts from the guards, so his hands and feet were very nimble. How could he suddenly fall from the wall? Good. Second young master, let's go down the mountain. If the Lord knows that you ran out, I will be beaten again. The servant was under a lot of pressure. Qi Baiyu always made trouble, and the servant was always beaten. Sometimes, he was beaten instead of Qi Baiyu. Hey, let's go. No one will know. Of course, Qi Baiyu knew what was on the servant's mind. He burst into laughter and stopped thinking about why he fell down. He stood up and patted his clothes, pulled the reins on one side, and got on the horse. The servant also got on the other pony. The two horses ran down the mountain one after the other along the path. After they left, Chu Luchen jumped down from a tall tree by the wall. A guard under the tree looked at the young master nervously, for fear that he would make any mistake. Although Chu Luchun looked pale, he seemed to be in good spirits. He coughed in a low voice and snorted while looking at the direction where Chi Baiyu disappeared. Climbing the wall of the nunnery in the middle of the night, it was obvious that he was not a good person. If he was not a good person at such a young age, what would happen when he grew up? He would be a flower thief. Qin Wanru, that little girl, was blind. How dare she call him brother? Master, shall we go back now? The guard asked carefully. He reached out his hand to hold Chu Luchun, afraid that something bad would happen to him. Go! Chu Luchun said angrily. He turned around and walked 2 steps with his hands behind his back. Suddenly he turned back and sneered at the wall. Then he strode away as the guard became more and more careful. He didn't know what this master wanted to do. He was going to go back to the capital city tomorrow, but he said he wanted to come to Jingshin Monastery in the middle of the night. He just looked at it from a distance after he entered it. Then he climbed over the wall with other teenagers. Now he deliberately stopped to look at it. He didn't know what was so good about the wall of Jingshin Monastery. However, the guard also felt that he seemed to have found a great secret. Of course, this secret could not be told. The more he knew, the faster he would die. The guard felt that he didn't want to die young. So it was better to keep it a secret. Chu Luchun left early the next morning. His coming to Jiangzhou was a secret. Only Qin Huaiyong knew about it. When he left, it was even more secret. He didn't even inform Qin Huaiyong. Since he had arranged everything, he got on the carriage with the secret order from the palace and slowly went to the capital city. Qi Rongji came to the mountain early the next morning. She also got up early. When she reached the mountain, she politely went to Old Grandma's yard and respectfully greeted Old Grandma. If the relationship between the two families was the same as before, Qi Rongji would not find it strange. However, the current situation between the two families was not like fire and water, but they had basically cut off all contact. On the day when Qin Huaiyong got married, only Magistrate Jiang attended the ceremony. Now, Qi Rongji was showing her respect, which really did not leave a good impression on Old Grandma. After a few words, she said she was tired and saw the guest off. Qin Wanru helped Old Grandma to send the guest to the corridor. When she turned around and was about to leave, she was stopped by Qi Rongji. Chapter 93. What's the matter? Qin Wanru stopped and looked at Qi Rongji calmly. There was a coldness in her big eyes that could not be ignored. She was very indifferent and distant. Qi Baiyu, move aside. I have something to talk to Qin Wanru. Qi Rongji was about to say something when she found Qi Baiyu was standing beside her. She pushed him and pointed at a direction at random. She did not want Qi Baiyu to follow her. Compared to her, Qi Rongji knew that Qi Baiyu preferred Qin Wanru to be his biological sister. He would help Qin Wanru instead of her. If it were not for her father's insistence that she should be accompanied when she came to Jingshin Monastery, Qi Rongji would not let Qi Baiyu follow her. This man followed her and got in her way. I'm not leaving. I don't want to be blamed on me if anything happens to you. Qi Baiyu rolled his eyes and snorted. He moved aside a little but did not want to leave. Hey, what do you mean? Are you cursing me to get into trouble? Well, Qi Baiyu, I knew you were up to no good. You just arrived at Jingshin Monastery and you started to curse me. Are you going to set me up later? Qi Rongji screamed and walked over to Qi Baiyu and kicked him hard. Qi Rongji was shocked. Hey, how can you hit me without saying anything? Qi Baiyu stepped back again and said angrily. You are the one who doesn't know what's good for you. We two girls want to talk. What are you listening to? Get out of my way and play by yourself. Qi Rongji was getting more and more unreasonable. She walked over and kicked him hard. Every kick was aimed at the middle of Qi Baiyu's legs. She sneered and said, You are a son of a concubine. How can you be so shameless to follow your daughter? Her words were so rude that Qi Baiyu was so angry that his face turned pale. He stretched out his leg that was kicked and said to an old maid beside Qi Rongji, Look carefully. It's not that I don't want to follow her, but she is too hot-tempered. If anything happens this time, don't blame me. With that, he snorted coldly, turned around and strode away. Qin Wanru knew the old maid beside Qi Rongji. She was Qi Rongji's wet nurse. Of course, Qi Baiyu's words were not meant for this old maid. He was talking about Madame Li of Magistrate's Mansion, who was also Qi Rongji's mother. He could tell that Qi Rongji had been throwing dirty water at him in the past. Humph, a lowly bastard son. Qi Rongji looked at Qi Baiyu's back and sneered. Then she turned to Qin Wanru and pointed at the gate of the courtyard. She raised her head and said, "Let's go there and talk." Qin Wanru smiled slightly but did not move. "Qin Wanru, what do you mean? How dare you talk to me like that?" Qi Rongji was stunned for a moment, and then she was furious. "Why wouldn't I dare? Is it because your magistrate is superior to General's Mansion, or is it natural for General's Mansion to be bullied by people from your magistrate?" Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows and looked at Qi Rongji coldly, without dodging. There were servants from General's Mansion in the courtyard, and there were also servants from Magistrate's Mansion brought by Qi Rongji. If these words were really spread out, it would not only make the relationship between the two mansions look bad, but also the political problem of who was superior, which was not so simple. Although they were at the same level in terms of strength, General's Mansion was obviously more powerful. "Second Miss Qin, our first miss just wants to talk to you. Didn't they have a good relationship before? Why did second Miss Qin suddenly have a bad relationship with our first miss? What happened before was between first young master and your first Mississippi. It has nothing to do with second Miss Qin and our first miss." The old maid coughed in a low voice and answered. She was good at talking. On the one hand, she said that Qi Rongji had a good relationship with her, and on the other hand, she hinted that General's Mansion had wronged the magistrate. "Is first Miss Qi addicted to bullying our second miss? What do you mean by a good relationship? It has always been your first miss bullying our first Mississippi. Now our first miss doesn't want to play with your first miss, can't she?" Qin Yu took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Wanru, looking alert. "First Miss Qi, please go back. I don't want to say anything to you." Qin Wanru said calmly, "You think you are smart, but don't treat others as fools." After saying this, she turned around and walked back. Qi Rongji's face turned red with anger. "You have no manners. How could you say such words?" She had never been refuted like this, and it was by Qin Wanru, whom she despised the most. At this time, Qin Wanru and Qin Yu echoed each other's words, and she was so angry that she almost exploded. "First Miss Qi, the whole Jiangzhou prefecture is saying that you have no manners, and now you are questioning others' manners?" Qin Wanru stopped and looked at Qi Rongji with contempt. Now the whole Jiangzhou prefecture was saying that Qi Rongji was rude and unreasonable. Of course, it was impossible for her to have any manners. Even so, she still dared to mock others' manners, which was really a joke. "Qin Wanru, you bitch, just you wait. I will never forgive you." Qi Rongji really exploded, and her face turned red and then green. "Why won't you forgive me?" Qin Wanru said coldly. Qi Rongji was so angry that she couldn't even speak for a moment. "First Miss Qi, please go back. My grandmother is still sick. If you continue to shout here, you will disturb my grandmother. She is old and really can't stand your voice. First Miss Qi, please don't." Qin Wanru seemed to not see Qi Rongji's angry face, and her voice was still calm and cold. She pointed outside and smiled coldly. "Look, the door is over there. First Miss Qi, please guard the door and go out. If you have any problems, don't come to our General's Mansion. My big sister has already gone to the capital city, and now the people in General's Mansion owe nothing to your magistrate, so don't be so stubborn. Bitch, how dare you say such words? Qin Wanru, just you wait, I will tear you apart." If it wasn't for the old maid beside her who was holding her tightly, Qi Rongji almost pounced on Qin Wanru and scratched her disgusting face. "First Miss Qi, although our second miss is young, she is still the miss of our General's Mansion. You keep calling her a bitch, but I don't know where you got the temper to scold our second miss like this." Nanny Duan walked out of the room, and her eyes fell on Qi Rongji coldly, and her face was cold. Qin Wanru secretly praised Nanny Duan secretly. Nanny Duan deserved to be the most useful person by Grandma's side. On one hand, she said that Qi Rongji was bullying her, and on the other hand, she said that the magistrate was arrogant and oppressed the General's Mansion. She provoked me. Chi Rongji was shocked when she saw it was Nanny Duan, who served old Madame Qin, and hurriedly explained. Our second miss provoked you to break into her house? First Miss Chi, the relationship between our two mansions is obviously not good. Why did you come to see our second miss? Now you are scolding the miss of our general's mansion. I want to ask Miss Chi, is this the education of the magistrate that Miss Chi described? Nanny Duan said loudly. First miss, since second Miss Qin is not willing to talk to you, let's go back. The old maid who followed Chi Rongji saw Nanny Duan coming out and knew that something was wrong. She hurriedly pulled Chi Rongji's hand and hinted. What Chi Rongji said just now had offended the general's mansion. If Ningyuan army general was really angry with his master because of this, it would be troublesome. According to Madam, Ningyuan army general had secretly said that after he entered the capital city, he would also help his master to enter the capital city to make up for the marriage between the two families. If this matter was ruined, his master would be angry. Let's go. Chi Rongji stamped her feet angrily. Miss Chi, take care. If you come to scold our second miss again in the future, please don't come to our general's mansion anymore. We can't afford to entertain you. Nanny Duan raised her voice behind Chi Yunxian. Nanny Duan felt relieved when she said this. Qin Wanru also felt relieved. Thank you, Nanny. After Chi Rongji left, Qin Wanru smiled and thanked Nanny Duan. I hope this first Miss Chi won't come again. If she comes, nothing good will happen. She won't go back without making some trouble and taking advantage of us. Nanny Duan also felt relieved. In the past, Madame D had suppressed Chi Rongji and made her give in to Chi Rongji. Now she didn't have to do that anymore. In this aspect, Nanny Duan thought it was a good thing. Qin Wanru looked at Chi Rongji's back and smiled thoughtfully. No matter what Chi Rongji wanted to do, she would deal with it by remaining unchanged. With Chi Rongji's temperament, it was easy for her to be provoked and lose her head. She could not do anything to Chi Rongji because Chi Baiyu was here, but she could not guarantee that Chi Rongji would do anything crazy. Anyway, Chi Baiyu was driven away by her. Nanny, you go back first. I'll go to the door and have a look. It seems that there are many people watching. I'm afraid that Chi Rongji will vent her anger on others. Qin Wanru moved her feet and ordered. Okay, second miss, be careful. Don't make trouble with first Miss Chi. Her reputation is ruined, but your reputation is still there. Moreover, you can't explain it to the general. Nanny Duan was afraid that Qin Wanru would really make trouble with Chi Rongji at the door, so she lowered her voice and said with concern. Don't worry, Nanny. I won't make trouble with her. Qin Wanru nodded, and a trace of cold sarcasm flashed in her eyes. There must be a good show in front of the door. With Chi Rongji's temperament, she always thought that everyone would give in to her. At this time, there were not only the family members of officials watching the show at the door, but also many women in the market. When those women started to make trouble, they would not care whether you were the daughter of the magistrate or not. Chi Rongji came out of old grandma's yard in anger. When she came out, she saw some pilgrims who stayed overnight blocking the door to watch the show. She was so angry that she almost went crazy. She stretched out her hands and pushed the two women standing in front of her hard. She shouted, "Get out of the way, get out of the way. Are you blind? You are blocking my way." The two women who were watching the show were pushed and staggered 2 steps. They almost fell and bumped into several other women beside them. Chapter 94. Many people came to see them because of the loud noise. They didn't know the identity of the people in the yard and Chi Rongji. But seeing that Chi Rongji brought a lot of people with her, they knew she must be a miss from a big family. Although this miss had a high status, the fact that she scolded people as soon as she opened her mouth really made everyone feel that she didn't deserve her status. Because she didn't deserve it, more and more people came to see her. But there were old maids guarding the gate of the yard, so they didn't get too close. They just listened and watched from a distance. The walls of the yard of pilgrims in Jingxin Monastery were not high, so they could stand on tiptoe outside and see roughly. How can you say that? Where did you come from? How dare you scold me? Chi Rongji had suffered a great loss because of Qin Wanru's soft rebuke. Now she was full of anger. When she saw that someone dared to scold her, She immediately straightened her eyes. She looked at the woman's clothes and immediately exploded. She stretched out her hand and pushed the woman hard again. "Get out of my way. Good dogs don't block the way. All kinds of bitches dare to block my way." Her words were said together with the anger that Qin Wanru had suffered just now. There were a lot of people in front of her. In this way, it seemed that everyone was included. Many people were not happy. Her hand that was pushed out was pressed hard by someone, and someone pinched her fiercely in the crowd. Qi Rongji didn't know where she had twisted her hand, but she screamed in pain. She retracted her hand fiercely and hit the woman standing beside her a few times. She was really mad with anger. "Get out of my way, you lowly people. Who allowed you to come near me? Get out, get out, get out." It would have been better if she didn't scold them. But after she scolded them, the people around were not happy. Whether they were beaten or not, they all came to Qi Rongji's face and body unceremoniously. Qi Rongji's maids and old maids immediately rushed over, trying to save her. However, Qi Rongji had scolded them too harshly and hurt them too much. Many of them were angry after being beaten and scolded. How could they allow them to take her away? Thus, a large group of people got into a fight. Qi Rongji had brought a lot of people with her today, but they were not as many as the onlookers. At this time, it was a mess. Some people even came to pull her hair and clothes. Fighting in the streets was not so particular. It was a straightforward fight. No one cared about her identity at this moment. In any case, no one knew who she was. No one would care about her now. Qi Rongji was a delicate girl. She screamed in pain when her hair and clothes were pulled a few times. She immediately learned how to grab people's hair and faces. For a moment, there was chaos and screams. When Qin Wanru came out, she saw the chaotic scene in front of her. She reached out to stop the people around her from intervening and stepped back. Then she asked a servant girl to invite the master of Jingshin Monastery to come over. In such a mess, anyone who got involved would be beaten, grabbed, and scratched. The safest way was to invite the master of Jingshin Monastery. The people who got involved in the fight were all red in the eyes. Moreover, there was another characteristic of women when they fought. They would grab their hair, face, and clothes. The master of Jingshin Monastery came quickly. Soon, she arrived at the gate of the courtyard and asked the nuns to separate the people on both sides. Seeing the appearance of the nuns, everyone knew that they were from Jingshin Monastery. Many people then remembered that they were here to watch the religious ceremony in Jingshin Monastery. They regained their senses and stepped back, revealing a group of people standing in the middle. The maids and old maids in the magistrate's mansion knew to protect their master. But even so, Qi Rongji still sat on the ground in a mess. Her clothes were untidy and her hair was messy. She slightly raised her dull face and there was a blood stain on her forehead. It was obvious that she was scratched. Qin Wanru walked forward slowly and asked someone to help Qi Rongji up. "Miss Qi, are you okay?" Qi Rongji was in a half-dazed state. She looked like she had lost her mind. Miss Qi, are you okay? Don't scare me." Her wet nurse was also panicked. She rushed to Qi Rongji and held her face, shouting again. "Whoever caught our Miss Qi, don't think about leaving today. How dare you scratch our Miss Qi's face? Do you know who our Miss Qi is? Our Miss Qi is the daughter of the magistrate. How dare you hit her? Do you want to die?" Chun Yi's face was livid. She scolded the women on the side. Her image was not good at this time. It was not much different from Qi Rongji. "Help Miss Qi up." The master of Jingshin Monastery ordered the nuns beside her. 2 nuns came over and helped Qi Rongji up carefully. When the women around them heard that it was the daughter of the magistrate, they panicked for a while. Many of them quietly stepped back and secretly rejoiced in their hearts. Fortunately, there were so many people at the scene and no one knew who had met this lady. Miss Qi, please say something. What's wrong with you?" Qi Rongji's wet nurse was still shouting in panic. "Take her to the meditation room at the side. I will check her face. Miss Qi's face can't be hurt." The master of Jingshin Monastery said gently. This reminded the old maid. She nodded repeatedly without wiping her tears. The face of the daughter of an aristocratic family was indeed precious. If it was really ruined, no one who came with her today would be well off. Thinking of their mistress's means, the servants panicked. Even Chun-Yi didn't have time to be angry. She followed Qi Rongji in panic. No one had time to care about so many people around. They scattered out one by one. They were all planning to run away. They hit the daughter of the magistrate and made her look horrible. No one could bear the responsibility. What happened? Qi Baiyu came in a hurry and asked with a straight face. Second young master, Miss Qi was beaten. Second young master, please help Miss Qi. At the sight of Qi Baiyu, the servants in the magistrate's mansion seemed to have found their backbone. One by one, they began to cry. Even Qi Rongji's wet nurse began to wipe her tears. Although they had always looked down on Qi Baiyu and often humiliated him with Qi Rongji, they acted as if Qi Baiyu was the one in charge now. Let the master of Jingxin Monastery check her wound first. Don't leave a scar. Qi Baiyu looked at the situation and frowned. That's what I thought too. Then let's go quickly. Don't delay. Qi Baiyu frowned and said. A large group of people left with the master of Jingxin Monastery. The onlookers also disappeared at this time. No one dared to stay and watch the drama after such a thing happened. Even those who had not been involved at that time were also flustered at this time, for fear that Miss Qi would not be able to recognize them clearly and would randomly select people. They could not get themselves involved in the drama. Miss Qi, will we be blamed for this? Qin Yu was a little worried. Of course not. Qin Wanru shook her head. Qi Rongji was indeed provoked by her on purpose, but she was not the one who had the conflict with her. Moreover, it was Qi Rongji herself who had hurt Qin Wanru and even hit Qin Wanru. In the chaos afterward, no one knew who had hit Qin Wanru. Moreover, Magistrate Qi did not want the whole Jiangzhou prefecture to talk about his daughter's behavior like a shrew after such a shameful thing. When they returned to the room, old grandma also asked about the situation outside. Such a big noise had alarmed her. But she did not say anything when she heard that Qi Rongji was not in a serious condition. The whole thing was caused by Qi Rongji herself. It had nothing to do with the general's mansion. What? You didn't arrest those lowly people who beat me. What are you for? What are you for? Qi Rongji's forehead was wrapped with a big white scarf. Her face was pale as she cursed. She reached for the teacup beside her and was about to smash it on Qi Baiyu's face. Qi Baiyu reached out and grabbed the teacup in her hand. He smashed it on the ground and said harshly, "Have you had enough? Do you still want to make trouble? Now the whole Jiangzhou prefecture knows about your reputation, Miss Qi. You came here to burn incense, but you fought with other pilgrims. You are like a shrew in the market. You used to have a reputation of being rude and unreasonable, but now you have another one and many people saw it. What more do you want, Qi Rongji? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You are the son of a concubine. How dare you say this? If you didn't go to play by yourself, I wouldn't have had such a thing happen." Although Qi Rongji was startled, she still scolded Qi Baiyu loudly. She was so annoyed that she blamed everything on Qi Baiyu. In the past, she had always blamed Qi Baiyu for this kind of thing. Now she did it out of habit. I went to play by myself? Weren't you the one who pushed me out and asked me to go far away? How did I become the one who wanted to go out and have fun? Qi Rongji, we are now in Jingxin Monastery, not the magistrate's office. It's not a place where you can do whatever you want. Please take a good look. There are so many witnesses who can prove that you drove me out. I want to see where you can hide your face. Qi Baiyu said coldly. He moved closer to Qi Rongji and sneered, Qi Rongji, don't tell me you want father to know that you put something else in the other yard and wanted to hurt second Miss Qin in private? You want to send me away and then trick Qin Wanru in my name? His voice was so low that only Qi Rongji could hear it. Qi Rongji's face changed and her hands trembled. She looked at Qi Baiyu in shock and couldn't say a word. First Miss Qin has left Jiangzhou. Ningyuan Army General loves second Miss Qin the most now. The head of the general's mansion is also Madame Xue, who loves second Miss Qin. Old Madame Qin is in charge. If you really hurt Qin Wanru, Ningyuan Army General will think of ways to kill you. Chapter 95. Do you really think that you are the most distinguished lady in Jiangzhou? After Qi Baiyu finished his words, he moved away from Qi Rongji's ear and leaned back on the corner of the table with his arms crossed. You should think about how to explain this to father. This time is different from the last time. Many people saw it. You can't say it as you like. You will not be the only one who will be humiliated, but also father. The military and politics are not in harmony. Something big will happen. Jiangzhou is close to the border. Qi Baiyu's voice was not loud this time, but it was enough for other servants in the room to hear. They had all kinds of tricks in their hearts and wanted to shirk the responsibility, but now they had to face this problem. In the past, when Qi Rongji pushed the blame to Qin Wanru, it was not a big deal because Madame D and Qin Yuru were there. But now it was different. The power in the backyard of General's mansion had changed. Qin Wanru was no longer a person who was not loved by her father and mother. Moreover, the incident happened in Jingxin Monastery, and the passers-by who saw it were not people they could bribe. If what they said did not match, they might become the scapegoat in the end. Thinking of this, the servant girls and old maids trembled. But they were very clear that they would not talk nonsense. It was the safest to say what they wanted to say. Anyway, there were so many people at that time. It was not their fault that they could not protect young lady. Qi Rongji was shocked by Qi Baiyu's sudden ruthlessness. She understood what Qi Baiyu meant and her face changed immediately. You know something? If you don't want people to know, don't do it. How do you know? Qi Rongji's voice trembled. She was scared. If she really ruined Qin Wanru's face, she might be punished by General's mansion. Qi Rongji could not calm down when she thought that she almost ended up in the most despicable place. Just like Qin Yuru, she had bought her maid's hair to a brothel several times. But when she thought that it happened to her, she immediately felt that it was better to die than to live. She did not want to end up like this. Qi Rongji, I remember that father has repeatedly warned you not to make trouble in General's mansion, but you just don't listen. Whose slanderous words did he listen to this time to bring trouble upon himself? You caused so much trouble for your father and made yourself look like this. If it wasn't for the master of Jingxin Monastery, your face would have been ruined. Qi Tianyu continued to exert more pressure on Qi Rongji's heart, and then calmly led the conversation to the word, slander. Qin Wanru had already said that Qi Rongji should have been deceived to come here, so they should lead the topic in this direction. Slander? Qi Rongji stared at her wet nurse blankly. She was scared speechless by Qi Baiyu's words. Who asked you to tell me that I could go up the mountain to vent my anger on Qin Wanru? Miss. The wet nurse panicked and knelt down, wanting to explain. Nanny, how could you lead Miss here? Did someone give you some benefits? Chun Yi was a smart one. She was in a panic at this time and was afraid that she would be responsible for this. Now that she heard it, she immediately understood. She pointed at the wet nurse and shouted angrily. Tell me, why did you lead me here to deal with Qin Wanru? You said that you would drive Qi Baiyu away, and then talk to Qin Wanru, pretending to reconcile, and then use Qi Baiyu's name to deceive Qin Wanru to a secluded place. After that, you would knock her out and scratch her face, and then it would have nothing to do with me. Qi Rongji gave 2 hard slaps on the wet nurse's face and scolded her. You said that with the conversation between me and Qin Wanru, no one would be able to link it to me. You also said that even if something happened, they would only find out that it was Qi Baiyu. So what happened now? Qi Rongji wanted to tear the wet nurse into pieces, so she kicked her hard, and the wet nurse fell to the ground. She cried and grabbed Qi Rongji's leg, trying to explain to her. First miss, I just wanted to help First Miss vent your anger. Anyway, it was Second Young Master's fault, and it had nothing to do with First Miss. Qi Baiyu snorted coldly at the side. He walked over to the old woman who was still talking nonsense and gave her a kick. The wet nurse's body moved backward and hit the wall on the side, making a huge impact. For a moment, everyone in the room was stunned. Qi Rongji, don't think that you can always think of harming people and have someone to protect you. Now, you have to explain this to your father. As for her, I believe that you are smart enough to find out who is behind all this. You are just a stick in someone's hand. Qi Baiyu smiled coldly, and he moved the corner of his mouth. After that, he turned around and strode away. He didn't want to stay here and watch them fight each other. First, miss, I remember that the wet nurse and nanny Zhou from Ningyuan Army General's mansion are very close. Just yesterday, I saw them talking secretly in a corner. Chun-Yi screamed behind her. At this time, she was trying her best to find out the evidence and blame it on the wet nurse. Yes, I saw it too. Just yesterday, I accidentally passed by and heard something about Jingxin Monastery. But I didn't pay much attention to it, so I didn't listen more. It's Nanny Zhou from Ningyuan Army General's mansion, the one who follows Madame D. I also know her. There were a lot of people talking at the same time. All of them had come back to their senses. Qi Baiyu stood in the corridor, looked at Qi Rongji's room, and sneered. He strode out, and his servant followed closely behind him. At this time, he was full of impatience, and walked forward with a gloomy face. But he stopped at the corner. Under a big tree, Qin Wanru stood there, and her jade-like face was slightly raised, with a faint and gentle smile. Her face was very delicate, and the color was very vivid. She slightly raised her face, and under her long eyelashes, her eyes were watery. So beautiful and so quiet. As if something was soothing the impatience in Qi Baiyu's heart, he stood still and walked slowly to Qin Wanru. Have you found out who is behind this? Qin Wanru asked gently. When Qi Rongji was being treated, she asked Qin Yu to secretly see Qi Baiyu, and asked him to lead Qi Rongji to this side. She was sure that Qi Rongji was led to Jingxin Monastery by someone. Your mansion's Madame D. Qi Baiyu frowned, and there was a kind of hostility in his eyes that had never been seen before. He said coldly, It's her again. Qin Wanru was not surprised. She tilted her head and smiled, but her smile was a little cold. She wants to ruin you so much? You are not her biological son. She has raised you for so many years, and she doesn't have any feelings for you? Even if you are a dog, she would not want to hurt you after raising you for so long. Qi Baiyu said coldly, and his eyebrows were raised sharply. I am not as good as a dog. Qin Wanru smiled and came to a conclusion. Seeing that she came to such a conclusion with her beautiful face, Qi Baiyu felt more and more uncomfortable. He opened his mouth subconsciously and wanted to say something to comfort her, but in the end he could only say this resentfully, the one I raise in the mansion is not even as good as a dog. He was a son of a concubine. This was something he knew since he was born. His concubine was not a troublemaker. Every day, she liked to set up the Buddha hall in her courtyard. With one look, it was obvious that she was not favored. But even so, Lady Li did not spare her. She would pull her over to scold her every now and then. She did not treat him well either. If anything happened in the mansion, she would push the blame to him. When he was young, he was not sensible and cried a few times. Later, when he grew up, he gradually understood that he was a scapegoat. As long as Qi Rongji did something wrong, as long as he was present, he was basically the scapegoat. When he was young, he was beaten by Magistrate Qi for this reason. At first, he thought that his elder brother was not bad, but later he found that his elder brother, Qi Tianyu, was just better at hiding. When he framed someone, he was even more ruthless. He just said that Madame D had raised Qin Wanru for so many years, and even if she was a dog, she would have developed feelings for her. Qin Wanru did not have a biological mother to compete with her, and she treated her as her biological mother. In fact, he was also talking about himself. His biological mother did not compete with her, and he was also a noble Madame Li at the beginning. But in the end, both of them almost became the scapegoat for Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru for the rest of their lives. Both of them were not loved by their parents, and no one would help them to be the scapegoat. If they could not clear it themselves, it would be a shadow for the rest of their lives. I want to live a better life. Qin Wanru smiled. Her lips were curved, and her watery eyes were curved. She was so cute, and without the indifference just now, she looked so warm that it made people feel sorry for her. Brother Baiyu, you also have to live a better life, and make those who want to frame us feel even more uncomfortable. Since they wanted to trample her into the mud, then she had to live a better life, and trample all of them. Qin Wanru was not tall, and Qi Baiyu was a little taller than her. At this time, she raised her head and looked at Chi Baiyu with childish seriousness and stubbornness, which made her delicate little face look vivid and brilliant. The ripples in her watery eyes were more beautiful than the surroundings. Qin Wanru's eyes were full of happiness. At this moment, it was as if everyone had forgotten that she was still so young. Chi Baiyu's heart was slightly moved, and his eyes softened. He recovered the sunny smile of a young man, and looked up at the sky. Yes, I want to live a better life, better than my brother, so that some people can't stop praising my brother. My brother is the pillar of the mansion, while I, the son of a concubine, am the useless thing that drags down the mansion. Go back, someone from our mansion will come later. This has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with old grandma. As for how to argue, it depends on how they solve it. Chi Baiyu waved his hand and turned to go back. Before someone from the mansion came, he really could not leave. Brother Baiyu, be careful. Qin Wanru nodded. She was afraid that Chi Baiyu would be involved, so she specially came to have a look. Chapter 96. Go to the capital city? Why do you want to go to the capital city? The news was so sudden that the smile on Qin Wanru's face froze. In her previous life, Chi Baiyu went to the capital city a few years later. Although Magistrate Chi was transferred, it still took a few years. When Chi Baiyu went to the capital city, he was appreciated and supported by someone, so he became an official in the Imperial court in just a few years. Since Qi Tianyu can go to the capital city, why can't I? Stay here and watch Qi Rongji act like an idiot? Qi Baiyu showed a smile on his face, as if he had thought it through. If Qi Rongji stays here, her reputation will not be better than Qin Yuru's. So, Qin Wanru didn't understand for a moment. She blinked her watery eyes and a thought flashed through her mind. Then she suddenly opened her eyes wide and asked, "You mean Qi Rongji will also go to the capital city?" Why not? Based on her current situation, it is impossible for her to find a good marriage in Jiangzhou. Qi Baiyu smiled. When this idea just came up, he just vaguely felt that it was good. After talking with Qin Wanru, he immediately had a clear goal. His playmate was going to the capital city, and his good brother was also going to the capital city. Then why should he stay? When Qi Tianyu became famous, would he step on him more and more in the mud? Originally, he didn't have any big ideas about himself. Although he was not favored in the mansion, at least he was the son of the magistrate. Others were respectful to him outside, and he didn't have any pursuits. All he wanted was to eat, drink, and play with some friends. However, there were too many things that had happened recently. Everything seemed to have little to do with him, but in fact, almost all of them were related to him. His hypocritical elder brother, his protective father, his spoiled younger sister, and his harsh legal mother. All of these made him grow up rapidly in these few days. He even had a vague idea that if he really did nothing, he might be left behind by Qi Tianyu forever. At that time, Qi Tianyu could frame him in any way he wanted and throw the blame on him. Men and women were different. Although reputation was not so important, responsibility was very important. So, Qi Rongji is also going to the capital city, and you can go with her in the name of escorting her? Qin Wanru analyzed after thinking for a while. My father won't leave, and my mother won't leave either. So, I'm the only one who can send her to the capital. Qi Baiyu twitched his lips and said with the slyness of a young man. It was not a good idea for a girl to go to the capital city alone. Moreover, Qi Rongji was someone who could cause trouble at any time. Who knew what would happen if she went to the capital city alone? And she could no longer stay in Jiangzhou Prefecture. Where will you live after you go to the capital city? Qin Wanru was still a little worried and frowned. We have a house in the capital city. Qi Tianyu lives there now. When Qi Rongji and I go there, we will naturally live together. Qi Tianyu has always been a modest gentleman. Of course, he won't reject me, his younger brother. He even has to be more friendly to me. After all, the capital city is not Jiangzhou. Father can't hide anything. Qi Baiyu said casually. Then what do you want to do after you go to the capital city? In her last life, Qin Wanru couldn't even go out of the mansion. She had no idea how Qi Baiyu was valued by others. She couldn't think of a good idea now. She was only worried that it might not be a good thing for him to go to the capital city at such a young age. There are many things I can do. Although I'm not good at literature, I'm good at martial arts. Actually, I can give it a try. Chi Baiyu stretched out his hand and showed his fist. Then he waved his hand at Qin Wanru and said, "It's useless to tell you now whether you can go to the capital city with me or not. We have to let my husband talk to your father. But in the end, I'm afraid their relationship will be better." After Chi Baiyu finished his teasing, he directly turned around with a smile. Calculating the time, the person he sent to inform had already arrived at the magistrate's mansion. The person from the mansion should be arriving soon. Since this matter was related to Madame D, he could push it to the general's mansion. Since the magistrate and the general's mansion didn't want to completely turn against each other, it was necessary to negotiate. It was actually not a big deal to let Ningyuan Army General's mansion take him and Qi Rongji on the way to the capital city. Whether it was the previous marriage or this matter where Madame D intervened and caused Qi Rongji's face to be scratched, it was Ningyuan Army General's mansion's fault. With this premise, it was also reasonable for the magistrate to make some requests. It would be best to send Qi Rongji to Ningyuan Army General's mansion. Chi Baiyu touched his chin and secretly thought about the possibility of this. In fact, this possibility was very high. Magistrate Qi came here with his people. After seeing Qi Rongji's face, he was relieved. Even if there was a scar, it would be on the forehead. In the future, she could just cover it with her bangs. Moreover, the master of Jingxin Monastery said that it was not a big problem. If she paid a little attention, she might not even have a scar. After finding out what happened, Magistrate Qi was furious. He dragged out several servants of Qi's mansion and beat them up. After that, he went down the mountain. With Qi Rongji's wet nurse as an excuse, it was not difficult to investigate Madame D's matter. That night, Qin Huaiyong went up the mountain. After meeting old Madame Qin, he asked Qin Wanru to take him to Qin Wanru's courtyard. After entering the room, Qin Huaiyong sat on the chair in the middle. He took the tea that Qin Wanru offered and took a sip. He was silent for a while. Qin Wanru was not in a hurry and quietly waited for him to speak. After a long while, Qin Huaiyong said, "What did she do?" His voice was a little tired. It was not the tiredness that a general like him should have. Although Qin Huaiyong did not say anything, Qin Wanru knew he was talking about Madame D. She did not hide anything. She raised her head and said, "Father, there is Qingsu grass powder in Grandma's bird's nest. This kind of grass can cause Grandma's illness. Often smelling it will make Grandma's illness more and more serious, and even make Grandma." Qin Wanru's eyes turned red. In her previous life, Grandma passed away in this way. Who sent the bird's nest? Qin Huaiyong did not ask how Qin Wanru knew it. Old Grandma had already told him that Qin Wanru was learning medicine from Mingqiu Nun. She also said that Qin Wanru was very good at it. She could already occasionally perform acupuncture for old Grandma to relieve her physical symptoms, and the effect was very good. It was sent by my mother. But my mother has just been in charge of the inner court for a short time. If she still uses the original people, it is very easy to mix a little Qingzu grass powder. Qin Wanru said sullenly. She did not raise her head, nor did she do much to disguise herself. Qi Rongji had such a big accident, and Madame D was found out. Magistrate Jiang was not a person who would suffer losses. He would definitely ask Qin Huaiyong for compensation. Since Qi Baiyu had the intention, the compensation must include protecting Qi Rongji and Qi Baiyu when they went to the capital city. Qin Wanru thought about Qi Baiyu's words afterwards and thought it was very feasible. Of course, with Magistrate Jiang's temperament, this was definitely not enough. Qin Huaiyong would definitely make some more concessions. Now he came up to the mountain to ask the reason. I heard that first Miss Qi came up to the mountain yesterday, and the bird's nest was also sent to the mountain yesterday. After first Miss Qi came up to the mountain, she should come to visit Grandma. If something happened to Grandma at that time, the first suspect would be first Miss Qi. With first Miss Qi's temperament, she might cause some other trouble. At that time, it would not be easy to find out Grandma's condition. Qin Wanru lowered her head and continued to say. She didn't want to hide these things. Madame D wanted to shift the blame to Qi Rongji because she knew Qi Rongji's temperament. This time, Qi Rongji would definitely want to make a big fuss. When Qi Rongji made a big fuss, old grandma's health would deteriorate due to anger and her illness would worsen. Who would notice other aspects? Qin Huayong sighed deeply and said, "Wanru, father has wronged you. It's nothing, but please don't hurt grandma. She is old and usually doesn't care about things." Qin Wanru's eyes were red. She shook her head, looked up at Qin Huayong in front of her, and pleaded. No matter how powerful Madame D's background was, she was married. She was different from an unmarried woman. She relied on her husband's family and her husband. If the man she married was only guarded against her and had no pity for her, this marriage was just a facade. Qin Huayong's repeated schemes had already made Madame D lose Qin Huayong's heart. In the future, if Madame D wanted to scheme against her when Shui Rulin was pregnant, it would not be so feasible. No matter what she did, Qin Huayong would think in his mind whether she wanted to scheme against something again. To deal with Madame Qin and her daughter, she could not be anxious. She had to do it step by step. Even if Madame D had Duke Yong's mansion behind her, so what? 1,000-mile dike could be destroyed by an ant's nest. She would do it slowly. You won't let your grandma be in such danger. You should also have a good rest. In a few days, take your grandma down the mountain. After a period of time, we will go to the capital city. There are a lot of things to pack in the mansion, yours and grandma's. Your mother didn't care about the affairs of the inner court before, so it will be better for you to help. Qin Huayong looked a little embarrassed. As a son, his current behavior should be regarded as a great unfilial. He knew that Madame D was not appropriate, but he still kept her. Thinking of this, Qin Huayong was also very ashamed, but he could only do this now. Father is going to be transferred to the capital city? Qin Wanru knew that she could not keep thinking about this at this time and should stop before going too far, so she changed the topic. She immediately wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief and showed a slight surprise on her face. Yes, we are going to the capital city. Father's transfer order will come soon. When all the procedures are completed, we will leave. During this period, you will help your mother pack things in the mansion and throw away some things that are not needed. Qin Huayong ordered. In the past, he only thought that his little daughter was naive and ignorant of the affairs of the world, but recently he found that his little daughter was very smart. She was not only smart but also useful. Originally, he was worried that old grandma's health might not be good on the way to the capital city. But now that Qin Wanru's medical skills were excellent and she was praised by the master of Jingshin Monastery, he had nothing to worry about. If he had known that Wanru was so talented in medicine, he would not have stopped her like his mother. Chapter 97. They will go with us? Although Qin Wanru had already guessed it, she didn't show it on her face. She only showed a slightly surprised expression. Yes, they will go with us. We owe Qi's mansion a lot. Qin Huayong frowned tightly, and his face didn't look good. Not only because of Qin Yuru, but also because of what Madame D did this time. Magistrate Qi and Qi Ping had something on them. The result of their showdown was that Qin Huayong had to temporarily accept Qi Rongji and try to find a good marriage for her. In the future, you only need to be close to your mother. Others don't care too much. Qin Huayong looked at Qin Wanru and said with a hidden meaning, "Yes, I will listen to my father's arrangement." Qin Wanru said respectfully, as if she didn't understand the meaning of Qin Huayong's words, that she didn't need to care too much about Madame D. After Qin Huayong left, Qin Wanru didn't immediately wash up and go to bed. Instead, she made medicine under the lamp. She was very careful and meticulous. She threw several kinds of medicine she needed into the stone mortar, took a small medicine pestle and pounded it carefully. She asked Shui Rulin to bring these medicines to the mountain a few days ago. When Shui Rulin sent the medicine to old grandma, she also brought some for her. She just got them from old grandma, but these medicines were also contaminated with the smell of Qingchu grass. For ordinary people, the smell of Qingchu grass was not a problem. This was a task assigned by Mingqiu Nun. It was not too difficult for her now. However, the medicine contaminated with Qing Chu grass gave her a sudden inspiration and a new idea. She had met quite a number of people during her trip to the capital city. In her previous life, she had been schemed against and broken off her engagement. Those people might appear again. She had to get rid of all of them before they could propose to the general's mansion. She only had Qin Yu by her side, which was too little. She needed more useful people, and she needed more loyal people. She liked a person and wanted to take him to the capital city. The medicine with the smell of Qing Chu grass was a powerful means. "Miss, how about this servant help you? It's so late. Are you going to sleep?" Qing Yu saw it was not early, so she brought in a cup of tea and said with concern, "No, I can do it myself. You don't know when to put in other herbs." Qin Wanru shook her head, and a smile flashed in her watery eyes. Looking at Qin Wanru holding the pestle so hard that her white and tender little hands were red and even slightly swollen, Qin Yu felt distressed. "Miss, I'm strong. I'll do the pestle. Miss, you can guide me on the side so that you can have a rest," Qin Wanru said with a smile. Qin Wanru's skin was as white as snow. When she pinched the handle of the pestle, a large red patch could be seen clearly. Jiao Jiao's small hands had always been reading books and adjusting wires. She had never used so much strength to hold something and do such work. "It's okay. You don't understand this, Qin Yu. It's better for me to do it myself." Qin Wanru looked at the red marks on her hand and was not very satisfied. She continued to use force on the stone mortar. Although her hand was in pain, it was not severe enough. It would be fine after a night's sleep. "Miss, you can pestle again tomorrow. You didn't do it all at once in the past, did you?" Qin Yu really felt distressed for Qin Wanru's hand. "The past is the past. I don't have much time now. It's only a few days, so I have to do it faster. Moreover, the medicine this time is different from the previous ones. It's best to do it all at once." Qin Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice. Under the light, uneven shadows fell on her snow-white and tender little face. It was almost a clear feeling. Her skin was like snow, crystal clear. "Qin Yu, go to sleep if you're sleepy. I'll pestle again." Qin Wanru looked up at Qin Yu and smiled. "I'm not sleepy. I'll stay here with you. If you don't sleep, I won't sleep either," Qin Yu almost said angrily. After thinking for a while, she went to the inner room and took out some ointment. She was going to apply the ointment to her miss after Qin Wanru was done pestling, so that her hand would not swell tomorrow. "Qin Yu, I don't need it. I just want my hand to swell a little." Seeing the ointment in Qin Yu's hand and her angry face, Qin Wanru smiled. Her pair of eyes were pure and her smile was even more innocent. It made people realize once again that she was just a child. However, the meaning of her words shocked Qin Yu. "Miss, what do you want to do? What if your hand is really swollen? Old grandma will be distressed to see it." "So, I won't go to see grandma tomorrow morning. I'll just say that I was scared by Qi Rongji today and didn't sleep well last night. I'll get up late tomorrow morning. You can go to grandma and apologize." Qin Wanru lowered her head and looked at her slender little hand. The red mark on her hand that was holding the medicine pestle became more and more obvious. It could even be considered as hideous. Her hand was very swollen and painful, but it was really nothing compared to the punishment of being cut in half at the waist. The smile on her lips became more and more brilliant. She could be cruel to herself. "But miss, your hand..." Qin Yu felt her heart was also aching. Her miss's little hand was so swollen. "It doesn't matter. Now help me to sleep." Qin Wanru stood up and looked at the unfinished medicine powder. She felt that it was almost time. "Should I put it away?" Qin Yu looked at the two small pieces of medicine powder and asked in confusion. "No need, just leave it like this." Qin Wanru was very satisfied with her work. It was indeed not the best finished product, but for her, it was the best. With the strength of a child, this was already the best. The next morning, Qin Yu went to apologize to old grandma on behalf of Qin Wanru. When Qin Wanru got up, Qin Yu had already returned. After helping Qin Wanru freshen up, her eyes fell on Qin Wanru's hand. After a night's sleep, Qin Yu didn't feel much better. She even felt that her hands were more swollen. Both of her hands were swollen. Even when Qin Wanru ate, it was not convenient for her to hold chopsticks and pick up food. Qin Wanru put down the chopsticks in her hand and asked Qin Yu for a spoon. She directly ate some porridge. After eating a bowl of porridge, Qin Wanru stood up and asked Qin Yu to wrap the stone mortar together with the medicine powder in it. She carried it to Mingqiu Nun's place. When she arrived at the hut at the foot of the mountain, Mingqiu Nun had already stood up and was doing her morning lesson. Qin Wanru knelt on the rush cushion and waited quietly with her eyes closed. Although Mingqiu Nun was also a nun of Jingxin Monastery, she basically did her morning lesson alone. She seldom did it with other nuns of the monastery. Moreover, most of the master of Jingxin Monastery claimed that her junior sister was not in the monastery. Mingqiu Nun was a quiet person and did not want others to disturb her. She was just the master of Jingxin Monastery. When faced with a difficult illness, she would help to treat it when there was no other way. Even if she helped to treat the illness, she was only using the identity of an ordinary nun in Jingxin Monastery. Even if some patients were cured, they thought that the master of Jingxin Monastery was busy, so they called a nun who followed her to treat patients. Because of this, many people only knew the master of Jingxin Monastery but not Mingqiu Nun. Finally, Mingqiu Nun finished her morning lesson and slowly opened her eyes. "Why did you come so early today? Don't you want to see old Madam Qin?" Qin Wanru usually went to see and accompany old Madam Qin at this time. "My hand is swollen." Qin Wanru pouted her cherry lips slightly and said with a little childishness, "I am afraid that grandmother will feel distressed if she sees it, so I don't want to go." "Why is it swollen?" After getting along with her for a few days, Mingqiu Nun liked her clever and well-behaved apprentice very much. Hearing that her hand was swollen, she could not help but look at her hand kindly. Qin Wanru hid her hand in her sleeve. Hearing Mingqiu Nun's question, she did not rush to show it. She smiled and said to Qin Yu, "Give me the medicine powder." Qin Yu respectfully took out the stone mortar wrapped in the bag. More than half of it was the medicine powder of the stone mortar. It seemed that the medicine powder inside was a little coarse and rough. Mingqiu Nun's face darkened and she scolded, "Wanru, what did I tell you? These medicines are related to the patient's health, and you can't be careless. How could you make the medicine powder like this? Look, there are some finished medicines here. How can the patient take it? Or even if the medicine is taken, the effect is not good and can't reach the expected effect of treatment. It may even delay the patient's condition." Qin Wanru lowered her head and nodded respectfully without any disobedience. "Yes, Nun, I will use more strength next time." Speaking of using strength, Mingqiu Nun's eyes fell on Qin Wanru's hand. Her words made her heart jump, and she thought of what Qin Wanru said just now. "Give me your hand," Mingqiu Nun said in a low and slow voice. Qin Wanru hesitated for a moment, but she still slowly stretched out her hand, although she looked a little reluctant. Her hanging sleeves were rolled up. Seeing the red and swollen white and tender hands, Mingqiu Nun couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. She reached out to hold Qin Wanru's hand and pressed her thumb on the swollen part of Qin Wanru's hand. "Nun, it hurts." Qin Wanru looked at Mingqiu Nun with tears in her eyes. She immediately felt so painful that hot sweat appeared on her forehead. It was really painful. "You peeled the medicine?" Looking at the position of the two red marks, Mingqiu Nun asked ambiguously. "Yes, I peeled it. My father said that he would go to the capital city in a few days. I thought that the medicine powder that you asked me to do hasn't been peeled well, so I happened to take the opportunity when my mother sent the medicine to Grandma. I wanted to do it quickly, but I didn't expect that I didn't do it well. Please forgive me, Nun." Qin Wanru lowered her head and pretended to be embarrassed. It turned out that it was not that she didn't care about the medicine, but that she was too small and couldn't use much strength. She also wanted to do it all at once, so she blamed her wrongly. Mingqiu Nun's face softened, and her voice unconsciously softened. "Why are you so careless? Next time, I will ask someone to do it for you. Besides, you don't have to be so anxious." Chapter 98. Yes, my father said it yesterday. I'm afraid of delaying your business, So I want to finish what you asked me to do as soon as possible. Qin Wanru lowered her head and said respectfully. She reached out and pushed the powder in the stone mortar to Mingqiu for her to check. Just now, she just looked at it. Next, she would use smell and taste to analyze whether Qin Wanru's powder was good or not. With Mingqiu medical skills, she could immediately taste the quality of Qingcu grass as long as it was in the first grade. She needed Mingqiu to worry about her. Mingqiu hand touched the stone mortar that Qin Wanru pushed over, but she didn't taste it immediately. She looked a little stunned, slightly lowered her head, and didn't speak. The room suddenly became quiet, and there was only the sound of the wind outside the room. None. Qin Wanru paused and called her worriedly. She didn't understand why Mingqiu reacted like this. You want to go to the capital city, so you don't study medicine? Mingqiu seemed to be awakened by Qin Wanru's call. She raised her head and showed a gentle smile on her face. However, this smile was a little bitter in Qin Wanru's eyes. I want to study medicine, I want to study medicine. Qin Wanru said eagerly. She grabbed Mingqiu clothes with her red and swollen little hands and raised her watery eyes, which were bright and firm, without any wavering. In fact, you have almost learned it. I have a medical book here, which I compiled according to the actual cases. You can take it with you when the time comes. In fact, I wanted to take you out for a walk. In fact, I also wanted to take you out to see patients. What you lack now is some practical experience. Mingqiu took a deep breath and said slowly. Her soft eyes slid over Qin Wanru's pink little face. She really didn't expect her disciple to be so talented. Moreover, she could draw inferences about other cases from one case, and even put forward some new opinions. What she lacked was just practical experience. Qin Wanru was overjoyed. Then can you go to the capital city with me? Mingqiu shook her head and directly refused. I won't go to the capital city. I have an appointment with someone, and I won't go to the capital city. Now what? Qin Wanru's bright watery eyes widened and she asked in surprise. This can be regarded as some old grievances. In fact, it's all in the past now. I just don't want to go there. Mingqiu shook her head and said in a soft and light voice. These words seemed to be said to Qin Wanru, but also seemed to be said to herself. What can't you let go of? And it has something to do with the capital city? Qin Wanru was stunned for a moment, with dark light flowing in her eyes. It's not a big deal. It's been so long. I'm afraid I've already let it go. Mingqiu smiled with a bit of self-mockery, which was different from her usual behavior. In the past, Mingqiu had always been gentle and solemn. Since she accepted Qin Wanru as her disciple, she had been very kind to Qin Wanru. She was an aloof elder, well-behaved and polite, and had never lost her composure in front of Qin Wanru. But now, Qin Wanru keenly felt that she had lost her composure. Since you have let go of it, why not go to the capital city? Wanru can also accompany you and show filial piety to you? Qin Wanru probed carefully. She really wanted Mingqiu to go to the capital city with her. She and Mingqiu were not master and disciple in name, but they were actually master and disciple. She really wanted to show filial piety to Mingqiu. Originally, she didn't dare to think that Mingqiu would go to the capital city with her. But since Mingqiu had the idea to take her out before, she might be willing to go to the capital city with her. Although Qin Wanru knew that her idea was actually not reliable, she still raised her watery eyes with uncontrollable excitement and looked at Mingqiu with childish admiration and longing. You child? Mingqiu seemed to be moved by the childish admiration in Qin Wanru's eyes. A smile appeared on her face and broke the bitterness just now. She reached out and touched Qin Wanru's head. I won't go with you. The capital city is too noisy and not suitable for my temperament. It's quieter here. Speaking of this, Mingqiu couldn't help but think of that person. That person should have married and had children now, right? For so many years, she had also converted to Buddhism. At this moment, her heart was really shaken. Sure enough, as senior sister said, her heart was not calm. Therefore, she couldn't go to the capital city. What happened in the past had already passed. Let the past be gone with the wind. Picking up the stone mortar at hand, she reached out to pinch a little powder and tasted it on the tip of her tongue. Suddenly, her face changed. Qingxiu grass? Didn't your grandmother not experience the taste of Qingxiu grass? Although it was the master of Jingxin Monastery who treated Madame Dowager, she still had to ask Mingqiu Nun about some medicine. Mingqiu Nun was also very clear about Madame Dowager's condition. How could it be? My mother brought it to me when she went down the mountain to deliver medicine for my grandmother. How could it have the taste of Qingxiu grass? Mingqiu Nun's words didn't surprise Qin Wanru, but she still pretended to be surprised. It's very light, but it's still there. If your grandmother keeps smelling it, her condition will worsen. Mingqiu Nun reached out to pinch a little more and tasted it. Then she raised her head and said with certainty, "The medicine sent here has been tampered with. Someone deliberately sprinkled the powder of Qingxiu grass in the medicine." Then, Qin Wanru lowered her head. She looked a little weak. Her red and swollen little hands pinched the corner of her clothes, looking a little pitiful. Her pink and delicate little hands were swollen with 2 big red patches. Her hands looked like a pair of bulging red buns, which really made people feel sorry for her. "Take Yujie away." Thinking for a moment, Mingqiu Nun said slowly, "Yujie Nun." Qin Wanru raised her head, and her face was full of surprise. Yujie Nun was also a nun in Jingxin Monastery, but she cultivated with her hair. She was an orphan who grew up in Jingxin Monastery. She usually took care of Mingqiu Nun's meals and learned medicine from Mingqiu Nun. She could be regarded as a good assistant of Mingqiu Nun. Yujie is actually not a nun. She only cultivated with her hair. Senior sister said she had no fate with Buddhism, so she originally wanted to send her down the mountain. Mingqiu Nun sighed. She was also a person who watched Yujie grow up. In fact, she also wanted to keep this child by her side. But she also knew that Yujie was young after all. Although she was more than stable, she actually didn't match this monastery. Mingqiu Nun and the master of Jingxin Monastery didn't want to directly lock such a young child in the monastery for a lifetime. If Qin Wanru didn't happen to go up the mountain to study medicine, Yujie would have been sent away. Because of Qin Wanru's presence, Mingqiu Nun also had a little selfishness. She wanted Yujie to follow Qin Wanru. Yujie had been on the mountain for so many years. Although she was smart, she had no background. If Qin Wanru took care of her, it would be easier for her to blend in. This was also the reason why Mingqiu Nun asked Qin Wanru to contact Yujie more recently. Both of them were children she liked, and she hoped that they could be closer. "Can Yujie Nun really go with me?" Qin Wanru opened her watery eyes wide, and she was so excited that her small body couldn't help sitting up straight. It could be seen that she was really happy. Mingqiu Nun breathed a sigh of relief. She was embarrassed to ask, but seeing that Qin Wanru didn't pestle the medicine well, and she didn't even distinguish the smell of Qingxiu grass, she was worried, so she asked. Now seeing Qin Wanru's surprised face, she was also relieved. These 2 children didn't force each other. It was best that they could take care of each other in harmony. "I can go with you," Mingqiu Nun said with a smile. After a pause, she said, "Just take her as your servant girl and take her down the mountain. In the future, let her pestle the medicine. After all, you are too young and have no strength." Compared with Yujie, who had been pestling the medicine and could be regarded as a Hercules in the nunnery, Qin Wanru's strength was too small. As for being a servant girl, Mingqiu Nun also thought about it very clearly. She had also discussed with the master of Jingxin Monastery before. Since she and Qin Wanru only had the real relationship of master and apprentice, without the title of master and apprentice, Yujie naturally couldn't be regarded as Qin Wanru's senior sister. Without this relationship, Yujie didn't have a foothold in General's mansion. Being Qin Wanru's servant girl was the best way. When Qin Wanru saw Yujie Nun easily lift a fish tank in the nunnery, she clearly knew that she needed such a person. And this time, it was also because of her. But she was still a little worried and asked carefully, "Does Yujie Nun know about it? I have mentioned it to her before, but originally it was me who took you to travel, and she was your servant girl. After all, your servant girl followed you, and I'm afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear so much hardship." Mingqiu Nun's eyes fell on Qin Yu. Although Qin Yu was a servant girl, the principal servant girl of General's mansion was also delicate and tender. How could she bear so much hardship? If she really took Qin Wanru to travel, this servant girl was really not enough. Thank you, Nun. Seeing that Mingqiu Nun had the same idea as her, Qin Wanru knelt straight and respectfully bowed to Mingqiu Nun 3 times. Then she raised her head, and her eyes were slightly red. She was really moved. In the last life, she missed the opportunity to learn medicine from Mingqiu Nun, so she also missed this elder who cared about her wholeheartedly. In this life, she finally found this elder who cared about her sincerely. She originally thought highly of Yujie Nun, but she found that her master had already prepared for her. Even if Qin Wanru was clever, she couldn't help but feel really sad at this time. Good girl, don't cry. I can rest assured if you are with Yujie. Looking at the child's childish expression, it diluted the bitterness in Mingqiu Nun's heart. She couldn't help but show a kind smile, which made her beautiful eyebrows more shiny. Nun, don't worry. We will meet again in the future. Yujie Nun and I will definitely come to see you. A trace of darkness flashed in Qin Wanru's eyes. This was her promise to Mingqiu Nun. In a few words, she had already understood that Mingqiu Nun had a knot in her heart, and this knot was still in the capital city. She would definitely find a way to solve the knot in Mingqiu Nun's heart and bring Mingqiu Nun to the capital city one day. Chapter 99. When Qin Wanru returned to Madame Dowager's courtyard, Yujie, who was dressed as a servant girl, was already beside her. The clothes that Yujie was wearing belonged to Qinyue. Their height and looks were about the same, so Yujie was wearing Qinyue's clothes. After taking off her nun clothes and hat, Yujie really looked like a well-mannered maid from an aristocratic family. Her words and actions were well-behaved, and she didn't look out of place at all. Madame Dowager was in a good mood when she saw Yujie Nun dressed like this, fair and delicate. On the one hand, she felt that Mingqiu Nun and the abbess of Jingxin Monastery had really put in a lot of effort. On the other hand, she felt that Mingqiu Nun had grown up in the monastery. She looked dignified and decent and was not impetuous like her age. She would be a good assistant to Zhuozhuo in the future. Since then, it was confirmed that Yujie would also follow Qin Wanru and become a principal servant girl of Qin Wanru. She also went down the mountain with Qin Wanru. On the day he left the mountain, the master of Jingxin Monastery and Mingqiu Nun came to see him off. Qin Wanru and Yujie bid farewell to them respectfully and got on the carriage together. The carriage went all the way down to the general's mansion. Junior sister, you really don't have to care so much. It has been so many years, maybe he doesn't care anymore? You don't have to suffer like this. Seeing the carriage of the general's mansion leaving, the master of Jingxin Monastery turned to look at her junior sister and said softly, "It's all in the past. It's been so long, what's the point of thinking about it? Senior sister, I'm very good now, quiet and peaceful. Isn't that how I live my life without being disturbed?" Mingqiu Nun turned around and said softly in a low voice. Her delicate face was calm and gentle, and it could not be seen that she cared about it at all. The nun of Jingxin Nunnery opened her mouth. She didn't know whether she should mention the powder on Qin Wanru's body or not. But looking at Mingqiu Nun's peaceful face, which was almost like that of an old monk in nirvana, she couldn't help but sigh and didn't persuade her anymore. She didn't know if she should say yes or not. If she really let it go, why should she be so obsessed with going or not going? But there were some things, even though she was the senior sister, she could not advise too much. He just wanted to comfort his junior sister's heart so that she could live a peaceful life. I don't know, maybe it's also a kind of happiness. When Qin Wanru and Madame Dowager returned to the general's mansion, Shui Rulin had already led some people to wait at the parking place of the general's mansion. Seeing Madame Dowager's carriage coming over, she hurried forward and helped Madame Dowager get off the carriage with Nanny Duan. Madame Dowager had recuperated well in Jingxin Monastery these days, and she seemed to be in good spirits. A group of people escorted Madame Dowager to the backyard. When they arrived at Madame Dowager's yard, they greeted each other again and sat down. Nanny Duan asked the servants to serve tea and then waved her hand to dismiss the others. Has everything been packed? The old madam took a sip of tea, calmed herself down and asked. It's almost done. But I don't know if I should take some important things with me. It depends on my mother. Shui Ruolin said respectfully. What is it? The old lady asked. The most important thing is about the shops. These shops are in Jiangzhou. Shui Ruolin hesitated. Qin Wanru lowered her head and played with the cup in her hand. She knew why Shui Ruolin was so hesitant. The general's mansion naturally had shops in the area of Jiangzhou. This time when they went to the capital city, the best way was to sell all these shops. But these shops used to be managed by Madame D. If they wanted to take back the contracts of these shops from Madame D would definitely not agree. Although these shops were bought after the general's mansion and not Madame D's own dowry, in Madame D's eyes, they were of course hers. She would never let go of them. But it was not a good idea to just leave these shops in Jiangzhou. Basically, it was unlikely that they would return to Jiangzhou in the future. Once the general's mansion moved to the capital city, even if they were to move out, they would not be moved to the same place. Madame Dowager also frowned. This was indeed a difficult thing to do. Based on Madame D's character, she would not give up the shops in her hands so easily. I will discuss with Huai later. Madame Dowager frowned and thought for a while. This was indeed a difficult thing to do. She did not have to snatch these shops from Madame D's hands. It was just that the general's mansion had just moved to the capital city. In the future, they would need a lot of money. Moreover, they had to buy some shops in the capital city. After selling these shops in Madame D's hands, the money would be very important. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook a meal without rice. No matter how capable Shui Ruolin was, she could not conjure up such a large sum of money. But these shops were now in Madame D's hands. It was really difficult for her to let go of them. Mother, but forget it. Just let my sister handle it herself. I still have some private money in my hands. When I go to the capital city, I can also make some arrangements. Shui Ruolin hesitated and softly suggested. Although she was also a wife, a co-wife was still slightly lower than the principal wife. So Shui Ruolin called Madame D's sister. How much money do you have? It's not much and it's not enough. When Huai goes to the capital city, not to mention buying the shops, it's also a lot of money for his colleagues to interact with each other. Even if I put my private money in, it's still a little tight. It's totally not enough for the people in such a big mansion to eat and use. Madame Dowager frowned and shook her head, denying. The general's mansion had many industries in Jiangzhou, including many shops. But these were all controlled by Madame D, and she had no intention of letting them out. Grandma, are you going to sell all the shops? Looking at Madame Dowager and Shui Ruolin's faces, Qin Wanru also knew that this matter was very difficult to handle. Moreover, Shui Ruolin should have gone to ask Madame D, and she might have been rejected, so she seemed to be at a loss. Of course, I'm going to sell all of them. Staying here will not only lock up the financial resources, but also leave some competent people here. It's not very cost-effective. Madame Dowager nodded, also very worried. Can you let Madame stay here? Qin Wanru looked at the teacup in her hand, and her long curly eyelashes flickered slightly. Let Madame stay here? That's definitely not possible. Not to mention others, Duke Yong's mansion in the capital city will definitely not agree. Madame Dowager shook her head repeatedly. There was no need to ask, it was definitely not possible. Qin Huaiyong had just arrived in the capital city and had no foundation, so he definitely needed the support of Duke Yong's mansion. Moreover, it was impossible for him to return to Jiangzhou, so it was not appropriate to let Madame D, the legal wife, stay here. Then, send Madame back to her hometown? Qin Wanru raised her eyes and said with a smile. The somewhat sweet smile on her face was very flexible. Her hometown is not in Jiangzhou. If she wants to leave Jiangzhou, Madame has to sell the shops, right? Madame Dowager didn't understand for a moment, and was stunned for a moment. It's not appropriate for her to stay in her hometown. Her maiden family is Duke Yong's mansion. But Shui Ruolin's eyes lit up, and she turned back to look at Qin Wanru with a smile. Mother, what Wanru said is reasonable. We can say this deliberately, And then sister will definitely not agree. She will want to leave early and automatically sell the shops. This time, Qin Wanru smiled slightly, like a smart and well-behaved little girl, and didn't answer. At this point, it was enough for Shui Rulin to understand. After all, she was just a child, and sometimes she shouldn't stand out too much. She didn't want her relatives to look at her as if she was a monster. If she sells the shops, the money can only be in her hands. I'm afraid it's impossible to dig money out of her hands. Madame Dowager shook her head, glanced at Qin Wanru and said, Shuizhua is after all a child and she doesn't think it through. However, although she was a child, she was a smart child. Although the matter had not been resolved, old Madame still felt very satisfied with her granddaughter. In another 2 or 3 years, when she was a little older, she would be able to stand on her own. Old Madame felt very gratified that her granddaughter was so intelligent that she was not inferior to the young ladies of those aristocratic families. She had raised her granddaughter, who was so intelligent that she was not inferior to the young ladies of those aristocratic families. Mother, you still don't understand what I said. Shui Rulin laughed, and now she thought of something else according to Qin Wanru's imperfect words. Sister is now locked up and can't go out to find people by herself. She must find Nanny Zhou who works for her to sell the shops. There were many people around Madame D, but the most useful one should be Nanny Zhou, who she brought from the capital city. Nanny Zhou was not only old but also knowledgeable and a very good helper. Moreover, because Nanny Zhou's foundation was also in the capital city of Duke Yong's mansion, Madame D trusted her more. So, Madame Dowager heard something from her words. If she sells the shop and the general asks for money from her, do you think that she, as a servant, would dare to refuse to pay? Shui Rulin said with a smile. If the general's mansion took back the money from these shops, they didn't need to worry about the money to buy new shops and some necessary customers after they went to the capital city. There are so many shops and the time when the money will be paid is uncertain. If Madame D knows that Huai has taken the money, she may fight with Huai, and next time, she won't give Huai a chance to take the money from Nanny Zhou. She will give Nanny Zhou a death order, and even ask Nanny Zhou to protect the money. It's not good to have a head-on conflict for money. Madame Dowager still felt it was inappropriate. If Madame D made up her mind to make trouble, and the whole Jiangzhou prefecture knew about it, the general's mansion couldn't afford to lose face. In the past, Madame Dowager was sure that Madame D would not do this because she cared about her reputation, but now she was really not so sure. Would Madame D guard the money tightly after the money was taken, and would ask Nanny Zhou to protect the money desperately? Nanny Zhou still had family in Duke Yong's mansion, and she would definitely listen to Madame D. If she really guarded the money desperately, no one could do anything to her. If she really forced someone to die for money, it would not sound good. Moreover, Shui Rulin had just married into the general's mansion. If Madame D used this reason, Shui Rulin would be at a disadvantage. If Duke Yong's mansion used this to control Qin Huaiyong after they went to the capital city, the general's mansion could only be at a disadvantage. Shui Rulin didn't know how to answer at the moment. She seemed to think it was okay, but also seemed to think it was not okay, and she didn't grasp the important point at the moment. Grandma, then we only need to ask Nanny Zhou for money once. Qin Wanru blinked her clear watery eyes, and said with a little confusion. Chapter 100. Shui Rulin's eyes suddenly widened, and a smile appeared on her face. Mother, since there is only one chance, let's get it from Nanny Zhou. Taking one time is at most the price of a shop. It's still not enough. Old Grandma still had not figured it out. Mother, keep an eye on Nanny Zhou and find out the person who trades with her. Use a method to make them pay on the same day. Shui Rulin said. Her words also reminded old Grandma. She thought for a while and nodded repeatedly, thinking that this method was feasible. Since they could only take the money from Nanny Zhou once when Madame D was not paying attention, they must get all the money and find a way to make Madame D get the money on the same day. After taking the money this time, there was no other money to take. As for the person who asked Jiangzhou Prefecture to sell Madame D's shop, It was not a big problem for Ningyuan Army General's mansion to ask the housekeeper to tell them the money on the same day. If Ningyuan Army General's mansion wanted to sell the shop, other people would not lower the price too much. It was easy to find the customer, and the price was easy to offer. The possibility of a successful transaction was also high. Grandma, do you still have some receipts from that year? It would be great if we keep them. At least there is a witness when Madam asks. Qin Wanru tilted her head and asked childishly. Rulin, you go with Nanny Duan to find some evidence. With a smile on her face, Madame Dowager looked at Qin Wanru thoughtfully and nodded to make arrangements. Shui Rulin and Nanny Duan answered together. Qin Wanru sat with them for a while and then came out of old grandma's yard. But she did not return to her own yard. Instead, she came to the swing near the wall and sat down. Qin Yu habitually went to push for her. But Yu Jie gently pushed her, hinting her to move aside. She had always been strong, so let her do it. Qin Yu nodded and stepped aside. Yu Jie went up and pushed the swing. Qin Wanru's body swayed, rising and falling. Yu Jie's strength was much greater than Qin Yu's, and the height she rose was much higher than Qin Yu, even higher than when Qin Wanru jumped over the wall that day. The wind lifted the young girl's figure up high. Under her beautiful black hair, her clear eyes were dark and deep. In her playfulness, there was an absolute beauty and charm that a girl had yet to fully display. The corners of her lips were slightly curled up. Her red lips were enchanting and bright, which made this little girl even more pure and beautiful. In a pavilion adjacent to the general's mansion, two youths were sitting. One was slightly older than the other. Both of them looked extraordinary, and their gorgeous clothes made it clear that they were not from ordinary families. Hey, there's such a cute little beauty in Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The teenager, who looked a little younger, curiously looked at Qin Wanru, who swayed from time to time. He clicked his tongue twice to express his admiration. Then he turned to another teenager with a cold face and said, "Is she the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion?" The cold-faced youth put down the file in his hand, turned to look at it, and then withdrew his gaze. He was not very interested and said, "Ningyuan Army General's mansion only has 2 daughters. This one is so young, so it should be. Could it be the older one? I heard that the older one is very beautiful. Not only did she offend the eldest son of the Jiang magistrate, but she also has an affair with Di Yen. Di Yen likes beauties the most. No matter how I look at it, this little beauty can be called a beauty. When she grows up, she will be a great beauty that can cause the downfall of a country." The younger one seemed to think of something good. He laughed out loud and did not hesitate to let Di Yen down. They had been in Jiangzhou for 2 days, and some things had been clearly inquired about. Speaking of the strange marriage between Ningyuan Army General's mansion and Jiang Magistrate's mansion, the younger one was very interested. This was much more interesting than these messy files. The weather was so good, how could they stay in the mansion all the time? Even the young girls in the boudoir knew how to play on the swing, but they had to stay here. The more they thought about it, the more bored they became. This one looks very young, but it's just a little girl. The cold-faced youth picked up the file in his hand and said uninterestedly. Even if they had good eyesight, they could only vaguely see that it was a young child. It was actually a stretch to say that she was a young girl. Although Ningyuan Army General does not have a son, his 2 daughters are as beautiful as flowers and jade. He is indeed good at giving birth to daughters. Because of the rumors, the younger one was already sure that Qin Yuru was a great beauty. He immediately pinched his chin, leaned against the window, and continued to look outside. He felt quite interested. This swing was not bad. When he returned to his residence, he wanted to set up a few in the backyard of his residence for fun. When the others were free, they could come over and play together. They could even organize a competition or something. "Big brother, when are we going back?" The younger one felt that these 2 days in Jiangzhou were boring and wanted to go back. He turned around and looked at his big brother, who had a cold look in his eyes, and said impatiently, "Tomorrow." The cold-eyed youth put down the file in his hand and pinched his forehead. His expression didn't look too good either. If one looked carefully, it was not that he was born with cold eyes, but that his complexion was not good. In addition, there was only coldness on his face, which made him look a little colder. So soon? That's great. Not looking for Chu Luchan anymore? The younger one turned around and said in surprise. To be honest, there was really nothing fun in Jiangzhou. It was better to go back to the capital city early. I think he has gone back. The gloomy young man leaned back and closed his eyes as he leaned back on the chair. He didn't get much information. It seemed like he had left a long time ago, but it also seemed like he had left in the past few days. It was difficult for anyone to track his whereabouts. That's great. Let's go back to the capital city. There are many opportunities in the capital city. Why did we come to Jiangzhou? Although the younger one was muttering, he seemed to be in a good mood. There was a big smile on his face, and his eyes turned to the figure outside the window. Big brother, I heard that Ningyuan army general is also going to be transferred back to the capital city? He should be returning to the capital soon. The cold-faced youth nodded and twitched the corner of his mouth. It seemed that he did not know how to smile. The twitching of the corner of his mouth did not look like he was smiling. Will his two daughters go back to the capital city together? The young man said happily. His little daughter looks like a lively girl. Not bad. What do you want to do? Ningyuan army general is someone that father thinks highly of. Don't act rashly. The cold-faced youth warned the younger one. What do I want to do? What else can I do? I just think that this little girl is very interesting. Look at this swing, it's really not bad. The younger one narrowed his eyes. He thought that when he returned to the mansion, his swing should also be the kind that could swing high. That way, it would be a little above the wall, and the clothes would flutter in the wind. It would be very beautiful. He could also match it with a bright red dress. It would look even better when the red dress fluttered in the wind, just like the little girl in front of him. Big brother, do you have a bright red dress? The youth's abrupt words made the big brother unable to react for a moment. After a moment of shock, he turned his head and looked at him. What do you want? I just think that she looks good in a red dress. Look at this girl. Not only is she beautiful, she is also so beautiful in a red dress. She doesn't look gaudy at all. The younger one said with a smile. His eyebrows and eyes were raised, and he had the liveliness of a young man. You don't look as good as Chu Luchan in it. The cold and gloomy youth said impatiently. He stood up and walked to the guard beside him. He handed over the file in his hand and gently ordered him to do something. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, the younger one curled his lips and said that he looked at Qin Wanru's figure. He even snorted unhappily. Chu Luchan, that evildoer, looked good in whatever he wore. In fact, it wasn't just red clothes. However, Chu Luchan, that sickly and arrogant guy, really had a few red clothes. He didn't know how a guy with such a pale face and pale lips could make a red dress look so different. What he hated the most were those young ladies from aristocratic families. They were all shy when they saw him. They never thought that Chu Luchan would die at any time. They might be widowed before they married him. What was the point of marrying him? They really had no taste. Big brother, I have nothing to do. I'm going out for a walk. Anyway, we are leaving tomorrow. Even if someone finds out and suspects us, it's too late to investigate. The younger one raised his voice. He had been accompanying his big brother here since yesterday. The more he thought about it, the more bored he became. Although there was nothing fun in Jiangzhou, he still had to take a look. Otherwise, it would be a wasted trip. There's nothing fun in Jiangzhou. The cold and gloomy youth said, Big brother, I'm just going out for a walk. I'll be back soon. Maybe there will be a surprise. The young man knew that his elder brother would say that, so he winked and giggled, looking like a rascal. There's nothing fun in Jiangzhou. Big brother, I just came out for a walk. Is it easy? Just let me go out for a while. Don't take too long. The cold and gloomy youth was impatient. He rubbed his forehead and reminded his big brother. Yes. Big brother, don't worry. I'll be back soon. The young one came down from the window and quickly went downstairs. It was not easy for his big brother to agree. He had to hurry up. His big brother might not let him go later. Qin Wanru didn't know that she was being peeped. She was still thinking about what happened just now. Her body swung high. When she fell down, she was very calm. Her mother and grandmother had a good discussion just now. However, Qin Wanru felt that some details should be strengthened. So when the swing fell down again, Qin Wanru said, "Yujie, don't push me. I have something to tell you." Yujie's hand stopped. "Miss, what do you want me to do?" She quickly got into her role. She had no resistance to being a servant girl and following Qin Wanru. For a girl like her, if she left Jingxin Monastery directly, it would be very difficult to do anything. It would be best if she could rely on a rich family. Moreover, during these days in Jingxin Monastery, Yujie admired this second Miss Qin who was younger than her. Not only in terms of medical skills, but also in terms of social behavior. She was very happy to follow Qin Wanru. What she signed was not a death contract. If she had the ability in the future and wanted to leave, Qin Wanru would have already agreed to let her go. Chapter 101. Yujie and Qin Yu looked at each other and didn't understand. In this way, she can do all the things when she has a chance to go out. Qin Wanru smiled slightly, with a smile on her lips. The more difficult it was to go out, the more she really wanted to do all the things. Nanny Zhou had to deal with the big things, but she could ask other servant girls to deal with the small things. Nanny Zhou couldn't go out, but the servant girls could go out. In fact, she could ask a servant girl to inform a person and look after a seller. Hearing that she was going to be sent back to her hometown, Madame D must be anxious to sell all the shops in her hands. On the other hand, she would certainly ask her mother's family in the capital city for help. "Yes, miss, I'm going now." Qin Wanru's words immediately reminded Yujie. She smiled and bowed respectfully. She looked at Qin Wanru with admiration and turned to find Nanny Duan. Although Qin Wanru was younger than her, Miss was smart and could think of everything. "Wait a minute, Qin Yu, you go to find Nanny Duan. After talking with Nanny Duan, go back to the yard. I'll go out with Yujie. And give Yujie and others the purses that you used to reward people. We need them later." Qin Wanru suddenly stopped her. Compared with Yujie, Qin Yu was more familiar with the people in the mansion. The purses that were used to reward people were filled with taels of silver. She suddenly remembered an important thing that must be done before leaving Jiangzhou. This person would be a great help to her in the future. Calculating the time at this time, that person should be in Jiangzhou. "Miss, be careful." Qin Yu nodded, took out a few purses from her sleeve and handed them to Yujie. She left after warning her. "Yujie, can you go up this wall?" Qin Wanru raised her head and narrowed her eyes to look at the high wall beside her. She asked Yujie to stay not only because Qin Yu was familiar with the people in the mansion. "I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Although I'm strong, I'm afraid I can't jump up the wall." Yujie looked up at the wall and measured the height, thinking that she was not qualified. "Can I jump up the autumn frame when it flies over?" Qin Wanru touched her hand. Now it was completely healed, and there could be no accident. "Miss, what are you doing?" Yujie looked at the top of the wall and then looked at Qin Wanru. She asked worriedly. Mingqiu Nun asked her to keep an eye on her Mississippi. She didn't want her miss to have an accident after only one day here. Weren't all misses from noble families well behaved? Why would he want to climb the wall? "I just want to go out for a stroll, but I don't want the people in the manor to know." Qin Wanru took it for granted. She had done such things many times in the past, so it was easy for her to say this reason. "Will it be dangerous?" Yujie was still worried. "There won't be any danger. I'll just stroll around. Even if someone comes to me, Qin Yu knows how to deal with it." Qin Wanru smiled. Qin Yu had been by her side for so long that she had long understood her feelings. That was why she told her to be careful just now. "Miss, how are you going up?" Yujie was also smart. She immediately knew that Qin Wanru had done this kind of thing many times before. Thinking that it should not be dangerous, she looked at the high wall and said, "I jumped up by myself when I swung up." Qin Wanru raised her chin slightly and pointed to the top of the wall. Yujie measured the height in her heart and said, "If Miss can go up, I can also go up in your way." "That's not necessarily true. Qin Yu can't go up in my way." Qin Wanru thought of Qin Yu's clumsy look in the past and laughed. "If Miss can, I will definitely wait." Yujie said with certainty. Okay, then watch carefully. The smile on Qin Wanru's face became more and more brilliant. You stand behind first. Yujie obeyed and stepped back. When she was a distance away from the swing, Qin Wanru began to swing. Every time she stepped back from the branch in the same position, she swung higher and higher. At this time, her attention was all on the swing and she did not notice that there was a teenager standing outside the wall. He was surprised to see her slightly swinging over the wall. She swung so high. For the last time, when she swung to a similar position, Qin Wanru let go and jumped to the top of the wall. She grabbed the roof of the wall and her body shook. The teenager outside the wall and Yujie inside the wall were scared and ran to the bottom of the wall in a hurry, for fear that she would fall down accidentally. Qin Wanru calmed down and stabilized her body. She turned back to look inside and whispered, Yujie, can you do it? Seeing that Qin Wanru stabilized her body, Yujie was also relieved and nodded. Miss, don't worry, I can do it. Although she didn't know how to swing, she saw Qin Wanru's way just now and felt that it was not difficult. Originally, she was more flexible and stronger than ordinary people. Sitting on the swing, Yujie pulled the rope above and sensed it. She raised her head and said to Qin Wanru, who was still on the high wall, Miss, you go down first or stay aside. I'm afraid that I will hit you. Oh, wait a minute, I'll go down first. Qin Wanru looked around and felt that it was safer to go down. She took a few steps to the side, which was the trunk sticking out of the wall. She held the branch and carefully slid down. It's the first time for me to see a miss from an aristocratic family climb over a wall and a tree. Well done, well done. Before she landed, she suddenly heard someone talking. Qin Wanru was so shocked that she almost fell from the tree. She quickly calmed down and slowly slid down. She turned her head and looked at the teenager who was leaning against the wall and watching the scene with an unfriendly look. Although there was a grass in the teenager's mouth, he was dressed in luxurious clothes and was full of noble air. At first glance, she knew that he was not an ordinary person. Behind him was a young servant, who looked about the same age as him. At this time, he was also looking at Qin Wanru with a smile. Like his master, he was also watching the scene. Qin Wanru pursed her pink lips. She didn't know this person, but it didn't prevent her from knowing that he was not ordinary. In her previous life, she had also seen some childs from aristocratic families, but the one in front of her seemed to be born with noble air and could not be an ordinary child. Who are you? Under the long eyelashes, a pair of big black eyes looked at the teenager who suddenly appeared in front of her with vigilance. Why aren't you afraid? Why didn't you fall from the tree? I have already made a posture to catch you just now. The teenager looked up at the tree beside Qin Wanru and then looked at Qin Wanru. He sighed, as if it was a pity that Qin Wanru didn't fall and let him catch her. Who are you? Qin Wanru said unhappily. Then who are you? The second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion? The teenager tilted his head and didn't answer her, but curiously looked up and down at her. It wasn't just because of her bravery in climbing over walls and trees that he had never seen from other young ladies of aristocratic families. It was also because of her appearance. She was already so outstanding at such a young age. How stunning would she be when she grew up? He didn't see her clearly because he was a little far away just now. At this time, he found that the girl in front of him not only had a stunning appearance, but also a bright and beautiful face. Her pink lips reflected her jade-like skin, which was white with pink, charming and moving. Even if she was just a girl, she was amazing. What do you want? Qin Wanru's eyes calmed down, and her long eyelashes fluttered twice. Seeing you climb over the wall here, I'm curious. The teenager raised his head, threw down the grass in his hand, and strode over. Qin Wanru didn't know what he was going to do, so she carefully avoided him. However, she saw that he walked to the tree, reached out and hugged the trunk. After trying twice, he crossed his legs and climbed up very cleverly. After reaching the top of the wall, he turned back and sat on the wall. He proudly turned back and said to Qin Wanru below, "How is it? Isn't it awesome? When it comes to climbing trees, no one is better than me." Before he finished boasting, he felt that his back was hit heavily by something, and his body fell down involuntarily. Xiao Liuzi rushed over and wanted to catch him. Xiao Liuzi's hands and feet were very fast, and his own reaction was also fast. He reached out and grabbed a branch on the side to borrow some strength. When he fell down, he felt that the fall would not be too heavy. However, when he fell to the ground, he found that it was different from what he thought. Although Xiao Liuzi was under him, he couldn't get up for a while. The teenager also felt very ashamed to lose such a person in front of the little beauty. He reached out and tried to prop himself up again, but his body was pressed heavily. His body, which had just propped himself up, fell down again. Xiao Liuzi, who was under him as a meat cushion, snorted heavily and wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. "Master, don't move. If you press me again, my lower body will be gone." Qin Wanru looked at the scene in front of her in astonishment. The three people who were stacked together fell like this. Then she saw Yujia holding her waist with difficulty to get up, and the faces of the two people under her were twisted. She couldn't help laughing. The suddenness of this thing was really unexpected. How could it be so coincidental that Yujia jumped over the wall? "Yujia, are you okay?" Qin Wanru smiled and went forward to help Yujia, who had supported the teenager to stand up. "I'm fine. Who are these two people? Why are they so stupid to hit me and fall down?" Yujia twisted her waist and found that she was not hurt, so she was relieved. Then she looked at the two people under her and saw their twisted expressions. She couldn't stop laughing. Feeling that his body was light and hearing Yujia's words, the teenager understood that he had also been used as a meat cushion. No wonder he couldn't get up just now. He held his waist with difficulty to get up, and pulled up Xiao Liuzi at the bottom with a grimace. Xiao Liuzi stood up and twisted his body. He found that he only hurt from the fall, but there were no other injuries. Then he rushed to the young boy and patted the dust off his body while saying anxiously, "Master, are you okay?" "I'm fine." The teenager touched his waist, which was the most severely pressed. Fortunately, it was not a big problem to move now. It seemed that he was fine. "Are you really okay? Master, do you want to go back and let the accompanying Imperial physician have a look? What if something really happens?" Xiao Liuzi said worriedly. "What are you afraid of? It's not that I haven't fallen before. Look at the girl, she is fine. What can happen to me?" Being said by Xiao Liuzi in front of the girl, the teenager felt particularly embarrassed. He patted his waist again, and then pushed Xiao Liuzi away angrily, looking at the person standing behind him. Chapter 102. Where is she? Where is she? It's only been a while. I heard their laughter just now. Where is she? Eunuch Lu, where is she? The young boy blinked and asked. Eunuch Lu also turned around and looked around. He was also very confused. She's gone. Go and find her. The young boy stamped his feet, turned around and ran forward. He didn't believe that he couldn't catch up with them in such a short time. Seeing his master chasing after them, Eunuch Lu also hurriedly followed. When both of them were far away, Qin Wanru clapped her hands and appeared with Yujia. They were actually in the gap at the corner of the wall. In the crevice at the corner of the wall, there seemed to be a mansion of a rich family. At first glance, the crevice between the two walls seemed so small that it was almost impossible to hide someone. However, Qin Wanru, who had witnessed Qi Baiyu hiding there, knew that it was just the appearance, and it was not impossible to hide someone. After avoiding the inexplicable pair of master and servant, Qin Wanru left in the opposite direction with them, and then went to the most prosperous street in Jiangzhou Prefecture. There were a lot of people coming and going on the street, and the shops on both sides seemed to have excellent business. However, Qin Wanru didn't stop and went directly to a silk and satin shop. The silk and satin shop was very big. Yujia looked at it and thought that it might be the largest silk and satin shop in Jiangzhou Prefecture. It was bigger than the shops she saw just now. There were a lot of people going in and out of it, and most of them were women. Qin Wanru entered the silk and satin shop and looked around. There were a lot of silks and satin in it. At first glance, they were colorful and attractive, very beautiful. Qin Wanru didn't stop at the door of the shop, but went inside. There was a tailor-made clothing shop inside. She could also directly take the materials she liked here and ask the people here to measure and tailor the clothes for her. It was very convenient. Qin Wanru stood at the material in front of the tailor-made clothing shop. A shop assistant immediately ran out. At the sight of Qin Wanru, he knew that she was either rich or noble. He immediately nodded and bowed and said, "Miss, what do you like? Do you need to measure it here and then choose? Just these materials?" Qin Wanru picked up a few pieces of cloth and looked at them. It seemed that she was not satisfied with them, so she was very picky. "If Miss doesn't like the clothes here, you can go upstairs. There are some embroidery and toggle and loop buttons on the clothes upstairs. If Miss likes them, you can pick some." The shop assistant pointed at the stairway. The stairway was on the side. It wasn't very big and it wasn't very conspicuous. "Is there a lot of good material upstairs? Don't tell me all of them are like this?" Qin Wanru put down the cloth in her hand with disgust and raised her head slightly. She was very arrogant and looked around the store. Obviously, she was not satisfied with all the cloth in front of her. Our miss only wants good materials. She doesn't care about money. Yujie answered cleverly. Looking at the surrounding materials, she was also full of disgust. So, this was a big customer. The shop assistant laughed happily. He pointed to the stairs on the side and led her up. "Miss, please go up. There must be some materials you like inside. Please go up and have a look." As he said, he walked up a few steps first, then turned back respectfully and politely turned his hand to the side. He nodded and bowed with a smile on his face. Qin Wanru nodded and went upstairs with Yujie. After the shop assistant led her upstairs, he went in to find a responsible supervisor on the second floor. Since she was a big customer, he naturally couldn't neglect her. Therefore, it was not a shop assistant who received Qin Wanru this time. There were indeed a lot of materials upstairs. Different from those piled up randomly downstairs, each piece of material occupied the same space. They were separated into categories and even had exquisite packaging on them. In one corner, there were many ready-made clothes accessories, such as exquisite toggle and loop buttons and embroidery. They were very beautiful but also very expensive. However, since they were ready-made clothes accessories, they did not occupy a large proportion. There was only a counter in the northeast corner, which listed these accessories. Because they were inconspicuous and expensive, there were very few people at this counter. It could almost be regarded as empty. Qin Wanru now stood in front of this counter and asked the shop assistant to take out a few toggle and loop buttons and embroidery. She put them on the counter and looked at them carefully. "Miss, this kind of toggle and loop buttons is the first in our shop. There is no such toggle and loop buttons in the whole Jiangzhou. Even in our shop, there are not many such toggle and loop buttons." The supervisor bragged while pointing at the toggle and loop buttons that Qin Wanru just asked the shop assistant to take out. There were 4 types of toggle and loop buttons: plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum. They were all very exquisite and beautiful, and even had some artistic conception in them. At first glance, one could know that they were not made by ordinary people. "Miss, look at these embroidery. Aren't they beautiful? If such embroidery is embroidered on clothes, your clothes will immediately become elegant and beautiful, just like the clothes worn by fairies in heaven." The supervisor almost pointed at the embroidery and flew to heaven. "A pair of things from my family is the best. If you wear it, you must be a fairy." Qin Wanru smiled slightly. As a supervisor, he was really good at talking. His bragging made people fly directly. "How many of these toggle and loop buttons do you have? And these embroidery?" Qin Wanru liked the few pieces that were taken out and asked with a smile. "There are 10 pairs of this kind of toggle and loop buttons. If Miss likes them." The steward smiled. Sure enough, she was a big customer. After so long, she hadn't touched any of these things. It seemed that she could definitely sell a few more today. "Not enough." Qin Wanru shook her head. Not enough?" The supervisor was stunned. One type of toggle and loop buttons was 10 pairs. 4 types of toggle and loop buttons would be 40 pairs. She really wanted to use these toggle and loop buttons until she was old. "Do you have more?" Qin Wanru asked softly. I'm afraid it will take some time, the supervisor said awkwardly. And these embroidery, I also want them. They are very beautiful. How many pieces do you have? The embroidery of plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum reflected different charms. I'm afraid there are only a few pieces here. If Miss wants all of them, you can take them away. As for the rest, I really don't have any. The supervisor hesitated. Embroidery was not toggle and loop buttons, and it took a lot of time to make each piece. Can you ask someone to make more of this kind of embroidery? Our Miss likes it. Money is not a problem. Yujia helped Qin Wanru to say. Even the servant girl was so rich. She must be a big customer. The supervisor was very embarrassed. But looking at the rich master and servant girl in front of him, he still told the truth. These embroidery and toggle and loop buttons are all made by an embroidery woman. But the contract between the embroidery woman and our shop is about to expire. She has made it clear to our shop before that she will not renew the contract. Qin Wanru glanced at Yujie, who immediately understood. She reached out and took out 2 purses from her sleeves. She gave them to the supervisor. Tell me about the embroidery woman. She is such a good embroidery woman. Why don't you use her? She rewarded 2 purses at once. After touching the inside, the supervisor immediately dispelled his doubts. He looked around and found no one was around. He also lowered his voice and said, the toggle and loop buttons she makes are really good, but the price is too high, and there are few people who want them. Our shop owner thinks it is not worth it. So, we think it is better to fire her. Just in these 2 days. Where does she live? Qin Wanru asked. Because he took 2 purses, the supervisor was very attentive and didn't feel that Qin Wanru's question was rude. She lives at the corner of Tangdong Street. Go and ask Madame Dong, who makes toggle and loop buttons and embroidery. Many people know her. He also revealed the shop owner's secret, so his voice became lower and lower. Fortunately, he was a supervisor. If he was just a shop assistant, he would definitely not know. Thank you very much. Seeing that Qin Wanru was about to turn and leave, Yujia smiled and thanked her. She followed Qin Wanru downstairs. Qin Wanru knew Tangdong Street. It was just 2 turns ahead. They walked there. When they turned the corner, they asked an old maid in the roadside grocery store. The old maid showed them the way. The 2 of them turned into a small alley. The alley was not big. The ground was covered with scattered bluestone slabs, which were broken in several places. There were small courtyards on the side. Some of the courtyards were open, and there were many people coming in and out. It could be seen that several families lived there. The environment did not look good at all. Fortunately, Madame Dong lived at the corner of the alley, and it was a small courtyard with a separate door. After asking passers-by, Qin Wanru was sure. Yujia went forward and knocked on the door. After a long time, someone opened the door. It was a middle-aged thin woman. Seeing a well-dressed lady standing outside the door, she couldn't help but be stunned. Excuse me, is this Madame Dong's house? Yujia went forward and greeted her with a smile. Yes, I am. May I know what's the matter, miss? Madame Dong blocked the door and looked Qin Wanru up and down. She was not sure who this miss was, but she was sure that she had never seen her before. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to have no memory of such an outstanding face. Can we talk inside? Qin Wanru smiled slightly and said softly. Madame Dong looked at them again. Finding no malice on their faces, she turned sideways to let them in. After they came in, she closed the courtyard door again. It was a very small courtyard with 3 bungalows. The courtyard was also full of messy sundries. It seemed that the situation was not very good. Madame Dong took them into the house. There was a table and a few benches at the front door of the house. There was also a table near the window, but there were some messy embroidery edges, cloth for toggle and loop buttons, and brackets for toggle and loop buttons. It seemed that they were not finished and were piled there in a mess. Miss, please sit down. Our house is simple and crude. Please forgive us. Madame Dong asked Qin Wanru to sit down. She picked up the teapot on the table with a broken corner and poured a bowl of half-hot water for Qin Wanru. She put it in a large porcelain bowl and served it to Qin Wanru. Mother, Are there any guests? Who else is here? A woman's voice suddenly came from the right wing room. She seemed to be very surprised. Chapter 103. A girl of about 17 or 18 years old stood at the door, looking a little delicate. When she saw Qin Wanru in the room, she was also stunned. She had heard the noise and wanted to help greet Qin Wanru, but she didn't expect that she was such a young Mississippi. This is my daughter, Dong Xiu'er. Seeing her daughter coming out, Nanny Dong introduced her and then turned to Qin Wanru. May I ask who this miss is? She still didn't know Qin Wanru's identity. Yujia looked at Qin Wanru. Seeing her nod, she took 2 steps forward and said, Our miss is the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. Second Miss Qin? Nanny Dong said uneasily, while Dong Xiu'er looked Qin Wanru up and down curiously. Ningyuan Army General's mansion had made a lot of noise before. Exactly. Qin Wanru smiled and said generously. What's the matter, second Miss Qin? Madame Dong didn't think that she had anything to do with Ningyuan Army General's mansion, and she had never seen this second Miss Qin. So, she felt more and more surprised. There is indeed something. I heard that Madame Dong terminated the contract with the shop before? Qin Wanru didn't beat around the bush and came straight to the point. That's true. Madame Dong said after a moment of silence. Can Madame Dong sign a contract with me? Qin Wanru said with a smile. Calculating the time, Nanny Dong and her daughter should have stayed in Jiangzhou for a period of time in the last life, and finally came to the capital city. If he were to go now, it would be at least 2 or 3 years earlier than in his previous life. Second Miss Qin opened a clothing and accessories store? Madame Dong looked Qin Wanru up and down. She found it hard to believe that Qin Wanru was still a child. I've thought it through, so I want to hire you as the shopkeeper. I wonder if it's possible? Qin Wanru smiled slightly, but the meaning was very simple. In fact, it was hard to believe her current appearance. How could a soft and adorable young lady open a shop on her own initiative? However, her identity was still there, and the reputation of Ningyuan Army General's mansion was still quite strong. Miss Qin, do you mean that you want me to help you? Madame Dong was still very hesitant. A childish young lady wanted to open a shop by herself. What did she know? Would he come up with random ideas without knowing anything? Would he push the responsibility to me when the shop is in a mess? You can't expect a child who hasn't even grown up to be sensible. Moreover, this is the pampered young miss of the general's mansion. It would already be good if he wasn't willful and unreasonable. Yes, Madame Dong can take care of everything in the store. Madame Dong can also invest in the store with her craftsmanship. Qin Wanru said with a slight smile. She raised her pink little face with fluttering long eyelashes, with a calm and decent look, which was somewhat inconsistent with her childish look. But looking at her clear and calm watery eyes, Madame Dong felt that what second Miss Qin said might be true. Mom, just agree with second Miss Qin. It seems that second Miss Qin really wants to open the store. Dong Xiu'er didn't think so much. She was younger and more straightforward. She glanced at Qin Wanru and felt that she got along well with this lady. She was not only beautiful but also had a good temperament and was even steady. Compared to those older young ladies who still pretended to understand, they were much better. Madame Dong's previous employer also had a young lady. Every time she came to the store, she not only turned things upside down, but also gave orders here and there. She pretended to know something when she didn't know something. In the end, she even scolded the people in the store, making it seem that she was very powerful. She was just the daughter of a businessman, but she was already so arrogant, not to mention the young lady of an official's family. But the second Miss Qin in front of her gave people a different kind of steadiness. Well, since her daughter also said so, she also wanted to find a job. The previous boss was about to be closed, so she had to find a way to do something. Madame Dong, I want to go to the capital with you. I want to open a clothing store in the capital, Qin Wanru said with a gentle smile in her calm eyes. Second Miss Qin wants to open a store in the capital? Before Madame Dong said anything, Dong Xiu'er became excited. Her eyes immediately lit up, and her voice unconsciously became louder. Ordinary people did not know that Ning Yuan army general was going to leave Jiangzhou. Yes, our miss is going to go to the capital with our general and will leave after a while. Recently, she is organizing things. Yu Jie said in an orderly manner. Mother, we can go to the capital, we can go to the capital. Dong Xiu'er was so excited that she turned to Madame Dong with a smile on her face, and her eyes were red. Madame Dong lowered her head and seemed to be thinking silently. Qin Wanru elegantly picked up the big porcelain bowl and took a sip of boiled water. She behaved naturally and elegantly, without any grievance or uneasiness, as if she was drinking tea made from the best tea leaves. The sunlight swept in from the window and fell on her face. It was soft and calming. Madame Dong raised her head and looked at Qin Wanru putting down the porcelain bowl. She nodded hard and said, "Second Miss Qin, I promise you." Well, it should be during this period of time. Madame Dong has settled all her affairs. 5 days later, I will ask Yu Jie to take you to the mansion. When you leave, you will go to the capital with me. Qin Wanru nodded and arranged things more completely. I wonder if 5 days is enough? Yes, it's enough. Madame Dong thought for a while and said. She did not have many things here, and even the yard she lived in was rented. Qin Wanru stood up and glanced at Yu Jie. Yu Jie reached out and took out 3 purses from her sleeve. These were all the purses that Qing Feng gave her. They were all purses. Qin Wanru did not ask Yu Jie to give them this time. She took them and put them on the table. These are for Madame Dong to settle down the affairs at home. When we arrive at the mansion, I will negotiate and give them to you. Don't worry, Madame Dong. I will never treat you badly. As for the shares, I will tell you clearly now. I will divide the store into 100 shares, and you can get 5 shares with your craftsmanship. It was good enough to get 1 share with craftsmanship, not to mention that this was a store in the capital. Not to mention how big the store was, even if it was in a remote place, it was still in the capital. The rent of the store on the ground in the capital, as well as the purchase of goods, could not be opened without 10,000 taels of silver. 5 shares were equivalent to 500 taels of silver. In the past, Madame Dong only earned a few taels of silver a month in the store, so it was impossible for her to have so much money to buy shares. Madame Dong had never thought about buying shares of 5%. Now she saw the purses that Qin Wanru put on the table in person, which were full of sincerity. Second Miss, don't worry. I will not let you lose money. Madame Dong was moved and said. She had been desperate to go to the capital because she had no money to support them to go there. Unexpectedly, not only could they go to the capital, but also had such a good thing. She was very moved by Qin Wanru. Since the matter had been settled, Qin Wanru left with Yu Jie. Dong Xiu'er followed Madame Dong to send them to the door. When Dong Xiu'er walked, Yu Jie found that one of Dong Xiu'er's legs was indeed a little wrong. She walked with a slight limp. She didn't know whether it was natural or something happened to her recently. But since Qin Wanru didn't ask, of course, she politely pretended not to see it. After Qin Wanru came out of Madame Dong's house and left the alley, she was really tired. She looked around and wanted to find a place to rest. She happened to see a tea house opposite. Miss, let's go up and sit for a while? Yu Jie knew that she was tired at the sight of her, so she looked at the tea house opposite and suggested. Okay. Qin Wanru nodded. They entered the tea house one after another. The waiter came out to greet the guests. When he saw that it was a miss with a servant girl, he hurriedly led them to the second floor. There was a private room on the second floor, which was very suitable for this kind of miss to sit down and watch the street view when she was tired. The waiter led them into a small private room facing the window. The window was slightly opened, and the warm and bright sunlight shone through the window onto the table by the side. After ordering tea, the waiter left. After a while, he served snacks with tea, and then came in a pot of tea. Yu Jie, you also sit down. There are not many people here. Qin Wanru looked at Yu Jie, who was still standing beside, and said, Miss, I'm not tired. When I was in Jingxin Monastery, sometimes I was too busy. I didn't even have time to stand, let alone sit for a whole day. I had been running around all the time. Yu Jie shook her head. She really didn't feel anything. When there was a religious ceremony in Jingshin Monastery and she was too busy, she would also go to help. She had long been used to running around to fetch things and move things. She really didn't feel anything to walk such a short distance. By the way, miss, I remember that I have been here before. There is a pastry shop nearby. It is said that the pastry they make is the best in the whole Jiangzhou. Would you like to try it, miss? Yujia looked out of the window, and suddenly her eyes lit up when she thought of the limited scenes in Jiangzhou City. Seeing that Yujia's eyes were full of greed, Qin Wanru smiled. She knew that Yujia was also greedy, so she nodded and said, "Okay, go ahead. Pick some delicious pastry and sell it here. I want to try it." But Yujia said happily. She turned around and walked out. When she walked to the door, she suddenly hesitated and asked, "Miss, is it okay for me to leave at this time?" She was worried that someone would offend Qin Wanru. "It's okay. It's just nearby. Isn't it very fast?" Qin Wanru said indifferently. "Okay, then I'll go and come back right away." Yujia thought about it and felt that it was right. It wouldn't take much time to come and go. It looked very quiet here. After thinking about it, she went out. When she walked out of the door, she deliberately closed the door. Then she turned around and went to the stairs in a hurry to sell the pastry. Several guests downstairs came up and passed by her. It seemed that someone was surprised and said, "Ah," but she didn't care. This was the first time that she went out after returning to the secular world. It was impossible for anyone to know her. Chapter 104. What? Do you know her? The boy with a cold face didn't stop and only asked, "I seem to see someone I know." The younger boy stared at the private room upstairs with a strange expression on his face. If he was not mistaken, the owner of the private room was the owner of the room. If he was right, this girl came out from this private room. The boy with a cold face didn't comment on his words. The waiter continued to lead them to the empty private room, but when they passed by Qin Wanru's private room, the younger boy suddenly pushed open the closed door of the private room. The cold-faced boy stopped unhappily and scolded in a low voice, "Nonsense! Big brother, I met a friend. Let's share a seat with her." The younger boy didn't care so much and pointed inside the private room. In the private room, Qin Wanru was still holding a cup of tea in her hand. She was startled by the sound of the door opening. At this time, she quickly recovered her calmness. Her eyes fell on the face of the cold-faced boy, and she frowned slightly. Inexplicably, she felt a little familiar, but she didn't know this person. Then her eyes moved to the young boy who strode in unceremoniously, and her eyebrows knitted even more tightly. "Second Miss Qin, how about we share a seat?" The younger boy came in carelessly, pulled a chair beside Qin Wanru, and sat down by himself. Therefore, the so-called question was just a question, and it was not really a question. "Fourth brother, how can you be so rude? Come out." The young boy with a cold face and a little bit of dignity said coldly, and his eyes swept over Qin Wanru's delicate little face. She looked like a young lady from an aristocratic family, but there was not even a servant beside her. Thinking of his fourth brother's surprise just now, he immediately understood that he saw the servant girl. After saying that, he moved slightly and was ready to leave. "Big brother, this is the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. We have seen her before." The young boy raised his voice and laughed. "Qin Huaiyong's second daughter?" The cold-faced boy stopped, thought about it, and also followed them into the room, and even sat down in the chair opposite Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru pursed her pink lips, and her big bright eyes fell on the two brothers with a bit of coldness. Anyone could see that she was in a bad mood. "Second Miss Qin, you can call me Child Xian. This is my elder brother. We've known each other before, so it's not a big deal for us to have tea together," young Master Xian said casually, not treating himself as an outsider. He poured himself a cup of tea, took a sip, and said leisurely. A manservant standing behind the gloomy young man also came over and poured a cup of tea for the gloomy young man before respectfully retreating. "Where did you go before? I chased after you for a long time. I didn't expect you to run so fast at such a young age. You're amazing." "I've been in the capital for so long, But I've never seen a young lady from an aristocratic family who can climb over walls and run like you. Young Master Xen gave Qin Wanru a thumbs up. In the capital, young Master Xen looked at his familiar brother. A name flashed in Qin Wanru's mind, and all the blood in her body seemed to rush to her brain at this moment. Young Master Xen was the fourth son of the Emperor, Prince Xen, Chu Liuxin. Her hand holding the handkerchief was clenched tightly and trembling slightly. Fortunately, her hand was placed under the table, and she had already died once, so she had the memory of a second life. Otherwise, at this moment, she would not be able to control herself, stand up, turn around, and run away. She remembered who he was. That elder brother was Prince Yu Chu Luiyue, the eldest prince of the current emperor. Later, he was appointed as the crown prince of the Eastern Palace, but was abolished after only 2 years, and Chu Luqin became the new crown prince. Most importantly, it was Chu Luiyue who ordered her to be cut in half at the waist. That child, the sixth prince who asked her to take care of temporarily, was dead when he was put into her arms. That woman sent him to her arms, and then immediately accused her of strangling the child, and all the people around her testified that what she said was true. That day, he was clearly in the pavilion on the fake mountain not far away and had seen everything clearly. However, he did not say anything, nor did he ask anything. Without a second word, he made him pay with his life, making him the first person in the history of the kingdom of Eastern Song to be cut in half at the waist. He even fed him a bowl of mute medicine, not allowing him to explain himself. At that time, she didn't understand it, but after being cut in half at the waist, she was not completely dead yet. When she cried out in pain, she suddenly understood that the woman was originally with Chu Luiyue. They strangled the child, and they needed someone to take the blame. Without the child, now the only bloodline of the emperor was him, and he could use the emperor's power to deal with Chu Luqin again. She was just a pawn for him to take the blame. The blood vessels in her brain seemed to burst. How could she not hate him? Unconsciously, she picked up the teacup in her hand and poured the tea on Chu Liuyue's face, with reckless madness in her eyes. The water was not hot, and it had been poured out for a while, but Chu Luiyue was caught unprepared. He even watched the warm water poured down from his head, and his strict clothes were also soaked. "How dare you? How dare you plot against His Highness? Kneel down." The little eunuch who followed Chu Luiyue immediately screamed, and his face turned pale with fear. He hurried to help Chu Luiyue clean the tea stains on his head. Where did this lecture come from? How dare you? Qin Wanru suppressed the fishy taste in her throat and said harshly. She stared at Chu Luiyue with a pair of bright and beautiful eyes, and was not frightened by the little eunuch's words at all. No wonder this face was a bit familiar. It was because she saw him that day, but at that time he was wearing a formal crown, and the drooping pearl covered part of his face. The room became strangely quiet, and everyone was shocked by this scene. Chu Liuxin, the young boy on the side, seemed to understand. He suddenly broke the silence and laughed. "Big brother, she thinks you are a lecher. This girl is not an ordinary girl from an aristocratic family. She is very bold. I saw her climb over walls and trees before, and then she ran away under my eyes. Now she still thinks you are a lecher. How can this little girl be so interesting?" Chu Liuxin said with a smile on his face. Chu Liuyue took the handkerchief that the little eunuch took in a panic, and wiped his face. His eyes fell on Qin Wanru's face. Under the long and curly eyelashes, a pair of angry big eyes, delicate facial features, and pink lips, especially without any makeup, he had never seen such a delicate and beautiful girl. He didn't pay attention to her just now, but at this time, he couldn't help feeling amazed. But she was so small, and she was so bold that she dared to pour tea on his face. His face became gloomy. "No matter where you come from, this is Jiangzhou, and no one can be presumptuous," Qin Wanru said in a cold voice. Then she turned around and left. No one noticed the coldness of hostility behind her angry eyes. At that moment, if there was a dagger, Qin Wanru even thought that she would stab the dagger in her hand at all costs. The hatred of being framed, and the hatred of being cut at the waist, made her unable to stay here anymore. She was afraid that she could not control herself, and then she would have no excuse. Hey, wait a minute this. Seeing that Qin Wanru ran out without hesitation, Chu Liuxin was also dumbfounded. He looked back at his brother, whose clothes were all wet, and finally did not chase after her. Big brother, this girl is really brave. There's nothing else. Didn't you see her playing on the swing before? The aristocratic miss in Jiangzhou seems to be more energetic than in the capital city. There are not so many things that she can't do, and she can do whatever she wants. It's so good, Chu Liuxin said with a smile. General Qin's second daughter? Chu Luiwei raised his long and narrow eyes and asked in a cold tone. Yes, she is so young, at most 10 years old, but she is very fun. She is bold, and she is good at climbing over the wall. Brother, you didn't see how skillful she was when she came down from the tree. She is definitely experienced, and it is very interesting. Thinking of the previous scene, Chu Liuxin laughed again. Thinking of it, he was really scared at that time, but today he was scared by this little girl several times. Go back. Chu Luiwei stood up and said coldly. Brother, didn't we agree to drink tea here, rest for a while, and enjoy the scenery of Jiangzhou? Chu Liuxin's voice became lower and lower, and finally he had to be silent. Chu Liuwei's current situation made it really inconvenient for him to stay here and drink tea. You stay, Chu Luiwei said, turned around and strode away. Brother, go change your clothes and have a rest. Be careful not to catch a cold. Chu Liuxin was overjoyed when he heard it. He jumped and said to Chu Luiwei, who had already gone out, with a face full of concern. It was great that his brother asked him to stay for a walk. Without his brother by his side, he felt more comfortable to walk around. The only pity was that he didn't know where the girl had gone. She must have also regarded him as a lecher, right? However, it was okay. When General Qin returned to the capital, he would still have a chance to see this girl. Thinking of this, Chu Liuxin was not so anxious to see Qin Wanru. Chu Luiwei ignored his yelling and strode downstairs with his men. Your Highness, do you want to catch her? A guard walked quickly to Chu Luiwei and whispered. Chu Luiwei shook his head. Although the guard felt a little strange, he still answered and left. Miss, why are you here? Yu Jia looked at Qin Wanru in surprise. She was rushing back with a pastry in her hand and didn't expect to meet Qin Wanru on the way. Let's go back. Qin Wanru looked behind her and found no one was chasing after her. She was also relieved, and a cold sneer appeared on her lips. She was still a child who had not grown up. Chu Luiwei was used to fishing for fame, so he certainly wouldn't do anything to her. Moreover, they were rude to her in the first place. They even broke the door of her private room. With these points, he couldn't say anything even if she misunderstood him and splashed water on his face. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.